Welcome back. This is the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato, coming to you on a Saturday afternoon with the game film analysis on the Giants offense. All 22 coaches film. You'll, in the next 2 hours or so, probably get to see the end zone angle, the sideline angle. We'll break down key throws, key plays for those of you who are new to the show. For those of you who are returning, you know what the deal is here. So we'll talk about this Dallas Giants Week 12 game on Thanksgiving. Offense to me, Nick, better than I expected on film in the first half. Second half, sometimes you just get these weird game flow, game script type games like this one where it's just like the Giants defense couldn't get off the field, quite frankly. Like they were on the field for the first 8 minutes of the second half, and then they're on the field again for a while. And the offense had limited opportunities in that second half, and it showed. And ultimately, they bogged down in the second half. They had some garbage time stats, which we don't really care about. It don't really impact anything, but did help people cover the spread. So let's dive into this thing shortly on the first drive. But actually, before we do that, is there anything overall you wanted to discuss?
I felt like this game plan, first off, happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving, Dan. What was the best thing that you ate on Thanksgiving? We should start there, Dan.
I talked about this on the Fantasy Football Today podcast, actually. So I answered this question right. For some reason, I thought we discussed it, but it was on another podcast. But actually, my pops, shout out Ron Schneier. He's definitely going to be watching this and listening to this. But it is the truth. It is the best thing I had. He does like a unorthodox thing on Thanksgiving. Like we have like the normal dishes, the turkey, like I don't know, the sweet potato with the marshmallow, all that stuff that you normally get. But he makes this like flank steak on the grill with a really good marinade, or it's a skirt steak on the grill with a really good marinade, and it's so freaking good. And so I carved up a few pieces of that, and I had that, and that was the best thing I ate.
There you go, some flank
steak. How
about you? Yeah, I gotta try some flank steak. I think my favorite thing, my girlfriend really went all out this year, but it was probably the sweet potato casserole that she made with some brown sugar on top and some pecans and stuff like that. So is it pecans or pecans? I feel like when I say pecans, I sound like a pretentious douche, but I'm not really sure.
I say pecan, but a lot of people say it's pecan. I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, neither do I. Let's get back to the New York Giants.
Well, let me ask you this, though, before we get into the Giants. You ate sweet potato casserole with brown sugar in it. What have you done in the 48 hours since Thanksgiving to make up for what you did on that day?
Oh, it's been a very busy couple days because of the New York Giants, but I had to go to the gym, and then I also had to go on a nice long run yesterday, as long as I could with my knees, because I couldn't do it from a mental standpoint, as I'm sure you're aware of. And I'm sure I'll be going on it after this podcast gets edited and everything like that.
You got to make up for that one day of bad eating. I've eaten like crap the past 2 days. I was doing so well until Thanksgiving, but I'll get back on track. But let's get back on track with the Giants here. A few things we'll talk about throughout this podcast I want to bring up. One, the Giants did a good job of using Daniel Jones' athletic ability again to get him on the move against a really good defensive line. Something similar to what we've seen in the past. Two, there is a silver lining to this game, and this will be the lead title for those who are listening or watching on YouTube. Nick Gates, man. Nick Gates had some really good tape in this one, and it was really great to see in his first start at center this season him be able to do what he was able to do basically before he was injured with the Giants. I was never sure he was ever going to return to football after that injury. It was the Alex Smith gruesome knee injury. It was, some people thought it was a career ender. He's back on the field. He's looking good. And we'll talk about it at the end because I want to do a segment on, while we do the superlatives, like your ideal offensive line rest of season. But Nick Gates will be the center in my ideal offensive line, and I wouldn't turn back at this point.
Yeah, I really appreciated everything I saw from Nick Gates. You want to talk about just like a foxhole guy, all the cliches, man, eats glass, all that. I mean, I tweeted that, and it's very, it lives up to the expectations he does in terms of all those cliches, just how tough he is out there. And you could see him just finishing blocks at the end, almost getting into fights. He really plays to the fine line of being a very aggressive player or almost ripping somebody's head off. And I appreciate that type of mentality as long as he doesn't take dumb penalties. But in terms of one thing that I noticed from the offense, I would say it's the game plan essentially revolved around play action slide type plays. Get the defense moving in one direction. Out of shotgun, it could be out of single back. Mike Kafka did out a variety of different formations. You use the play action pass to roll Daniel Jones out. It's not the play action bootleg, even though they did use that, but a lot of the times it was at a shotgun, and they would have the H back from the perceived play side just come across the formation. Daniel Jones would fake the handoff to Saquon Barkley, who was aligned to his right, and then just take it and then just roll out to his right. And now he has essentially a three-level read from somebody coming from the backside, which was typically Isaiah Hodgins, Kenny Galladay, or Darius Slayton clearing out, and then that tight end, whoever it was, Chris Myrick, Lawrence Cager, kind of coming underneath. So I appreciated the fact that the Giants tried to get those simple, easy passes out of Daniel Jones's hands to slow down that pass rush and also pick up some, I would say, relatively easy yardage, right? In the NFL, no yardage is easy, but the Giants, no one thought they were going to come out and pass the football a lot, but they did on that first drive. And the first play of the game was a 20-yard gain to Lawrence Cager on this same exact type of play. We see the same design kind of happen throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I thought they did a really good job of using Saquon Barkley as quote unquote eye candy. And shout out Tom, who's a new listener of the podcast, but a big listener and a big fan, who I saw last night. Shout out Tom, because I never know how to pronounce his last name, Tom. I never know how to pronounce your name. I think it's Bigizinski, but I'm not positive on that. So you could correct. Yeah, it wasn't great. And so it wasn't as close as I wanted it to be. I never know how to pronounce his last name when I see it on the list. But as you mentioned, I say eye candy a lot, but that's what we're talking about. I mean, they used Saquon Barkley as eye candy. They did a great job of motioning him in orbit motion, or just kind of faking the handoff with him in one direction, getting the defense to move with Barkley. And then, like you said, doing something off that play action or off that play fake or off the motion with Barkley to another player on the other side of the field. That's what you want to do. You want to use your players like that. If they're not going to get the ball, use them as a decoy. So I like that too. That was definitely something that was interesting to see on this game film. But Nick, let's dive into the tape and we'll take a look at some of these other concepts and things that the Giants ran and had some success with. First drive of the game, they found a little bit of success, like you said, with the first play of the game with Cager, but it ended up being a 4-play, 27-yard drive that ended in a punt.
And look at the first play. If you watch the Dallas Cowboys defense, because this is going to be a play action rollout, if you want to call it that, to the boundary side. The entire Cowboys defense pays attention to Saquon Barkley in the shotgun going into the mesh point with Daniel Jones. They all flow to essentially inside of the hash. Cager is already outside the hash. He catches the football around the numbers and picks up 20 yards. And I also appreciate the fact that the Giants use Richie James in motion. If we see it from the sideline view here before, from a bunch with Cager, he motions Richie James to see what the defense is in, to see how the defense is going to react. But if you look at the Dallas defense, they're in a too high look pre-snap. And once Daniel Jones motions Richie James from the field side where that bunch is, where Cager is, remember he's going to come to the other side of the field to catch the pass, that safety in too high, Jerron Kearse comes down into the box and then matches Richie James. So Richie James just runs a wheel and clears out Kearse. And now with, I believe that's Isaiah Hodgins running an inside breaking streak, there's no one for Lawrence Cager to have to combat with right here. So this little wrinkle of just bringing Richie James over to clear out that safety really worked for the New York Giants. I felt like this was an excellent play design against this Dallas defense.
Yeah, it's a cool design because it clears out that space for Cager, like you said, while also using motion, while also using Barkley to draw the attention of the defense in the other direction. So excellent first play of the game here for the Giants, which sets up a 1st and 10 bootleg play by the Giants, which are just able to get 2 yards to. We've seen them run this play often in recent weeks with Barkley. This one was close for me. I think it could have been a much bigger gain if DeMarcus Lawrence wasn't able to kind of redirect and spin Barkley as he's trying to get into his break, because there is space you can see if he doesn't have to kind of spin around and adjust. But unfortunately, he does, and it kind of slows Barkley down. And by that point, the second level guys can react and get to him.
Absolutely. And I think Lawrence does a good job just kind of holding Barkley just for a second. And Jones fires the football. When Barkley catches this football, he's outside the numbers. And the person in charge of covering him falls for the play action element of this, puts himself in the middle of the field, and now he has to work over contact with Chris Myrick and Jerron Kearse to get to Saquon Barkley. But I feel like whoever that is, number 33, does a good job kind of getting out there, and Barkley ends up tripping over his feet to set up a 2nd and 8.
And it's not illegal contact, right? Because it's within the first 5 yards, what Lawrence does there?
Honestly, I'm not 100% certain if that would be, because it's not necessarily – because he grabs a hold of him. I wouldn't call this, so I wouldn't say it's illegal contact. he's not 100% sure if Barkley's going to block him, I guess would be his excuse. I think at this point, DeMarcus Lawrence fully knows what's going on. He sees Daniel Jones
Right.
on the rollout, so he just kind of reaches out and grabs Barkley, but I'm not going to throw a fit the fact that they didn't call it in that situation. There are plenty of calls in this game or non-calls that I think we could throw a fit about, though.
Okay. Sets up a 2nd and 8, and this is one of my favorite plays of the game for the Giants because it indicates they're willing to do new things. It's a 2nd and 8, and they design a shot play against the middle of the field safety look to Darius Slayton. Now, why is this important to me? Well, I feel like this team hasn't really taken many shots downfield on 2nd and long situations, on 2nd and short situations, on 3rd and short situations specifically. I love when teams go deep on 3rd and short, which is kind of an unexpected down to go deep on. A lot of their shot plays, and they haven't had many this year, to me, have come on 1st and 10 or after a quick change, change in like play, like if they got a turnover, they've taken some shots. So I love to see them actually, take a chance here on 2nd and 8, not worrying about like, oh no, if we miss this, we'll go into 3rd and 8 or whatever. And it's a good look for the Giants. Middle of the field safety close, as you guys can see on the film, which means that, look, you can trust Darius Slayton to win vertically on the outside. The corner's up on the line of scrimmage, which I think also helps. He gets a nice release off the line of scrimmage. Jones puts a solid ball up there, especially with the pressure. If it's an outside shoulder, to be honest, it's probably a touchdown. It's a little inside by a few yards and just a little too much for Slayton to make the play.
Yeah, Slayton just misses this. And I really like this play for a lot of reasons, primarily because you need to leverage Darius Slayton's best skill set, which is probably his speed and his explosiveness. And you need to threaten this Dallas Cowboys defense vertically. And that's exactly what the New York Giants did on this, 3rd play of the game, because everybody knows you want to give the football off to Saquon Barkley. No, we're going to take a shot. Dallas loves to run middle of the field closed, cover 3 match, cover 3, and then cover 1 type of defenses. They love those types of looks. So if you can look the safety off successfully, you're going to have a one-on-one matchup outside. And if you look, this isn't Trevon Diggs that Darius Slayton is going up against. It's Anthony Brown. And Anthony Brown is impressed against Darius Slayton, who is very fast and very explosive. I think Daniel Jones does a great job holding that safety in the middle of the field before coming back and hitting this one-on-one matchup. I like these shot plays. I will say they're starting to become a little predictable because who's the personnel package out here, Dan, right now? It's Richie James, Marcus Johnson. So every time the Giants align Marcus Johnson and Darius Slayton outside the numbers on these 2nd and long situations, a lot of those times it's been a 2-shot play against the middle of the field closed single high look. This is like the 3rd time that I can remember. A lot of the times the Giants don't align 2 guys outside the numbers. So just a tendency that we're starting to pick up on here. Either way, I love this play. And I also like what Daniel Jones does with his eyes. We'll see it a little bit better on the end zone copy, how he holds that middle of the field closed safety if the end zone copy ever goes. There we go. Look at the stripe of Daniel Jones's helmet. He knows he has that one-on-one matchup, and he holds that safety the entire time. If this play was completed, this is a big reason why, is because of Daniel Jones's eyes to hold that safety that long. I think that's a very underrated play from the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. Great play by Jones to hold the safety to his eyes. What are your well, let me first ask by saying this, because later in the game, I thought, first of all, I want to say that was a great observation by you. It will become predictable for other teams. If we are able to notice it, then opposing defensive coordinators are obviously able to notice something like that. So maybe they should leave Hodgins in on their next design shot play for Slayton. One more thing on this play. What are your thoughts on potentially leaving this ball a little further to the right by Jones so it goes over the outside shoulder?
Yeah, that would be the ideal placement for this ball from Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones maybe felt the pressure and the ball placement wasn't perfect. It's a catchable ball, but it's not an easy catch. There's some contact with Anthony Brown and Darius Slayton here, but it looks like it's initiated maybe a little bit by Slayton. You can see Slayton kind of grabbing Anthony Brown's inside shoulder, almost like in a hug. And then as Slayton brings his hand up around, he hits Brown's helmet. And I feel like that kind of threw him off kilter a little bit. Ideally, for me, I think Jones needs to put this just a little bit more high, a little bit outside. And this could have been a completed pass. Ball placement was not perfect. I liked everything else about this play, though, from Jones.
Yeah, and it's a tough throw. So I'm not trying to nitpick here and say, oh my God, how did he miss this? This is a freaking tough throw. I mean, even to get that outside shoulder, to hit that outside shoulder is a tough, it's a big distance throw. Like you said, 64 loses his block at the end there. Glowinski, who had a really rough game.
Worst game by far.
Trending downward for a while. I mean, he's had a lot of bad games for me. I guess this could be considered. I would agree this is the worst game I've seen, but I'm trying to remember the one earlier this year that was like just as ugly to me. I'm forgetting now. You might remember. You have better recall on this stuff, but he had one in pass pro earlier this year that was just as bad to me, or just a tad worse. But
It's
yeah,
kind of been all season. Like
it really
he
has
had
been. He hasn't had one good game really in pass pro.
Yeah, and honestly, the since the running game has been stifled by so many opposing defenses, like my thought of him as a starter is really starting to wane because we haven't seen those big run blocking plays that we saw earlier in the season. Like some of the blocks he threw against Tennessee were phenomenal from the backside on power gap,
Right.
climbing up and locating the safety with excellent timing. We haven't seen that in freaking weeks at this point. So I think a conversation should at least be held. I don't know if I'd replace him just yet. I'd probably allow him to start next game, but a conversation should be held, especially if Bredesen was healthy. With Nick Gates playing as well at center, to possibly put Feliciano at guard. I know that it's jumbling things up. That's one reason why I'm not like fully, hey, we had to put Feliciano there. And Feliciano's not great in pass protection either, but Glowinski was a real liability in this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, especially because both Josh Azudu and Ben Bredesen have had more experience, all their experience this year at left guard. So it's not as easy of a transition to find a new right guard. All those players in the mix. We'll talk about it maybe at the end of this show. I'll add a little segment for it in the superlatives, but we'll kind of figure out and get to a point of where we would want to be with this starting offensive line. But after this missed shot play, we set up a 3rd and 8. It's another play the Giants wish they could have back, man. I mean, this was a perfect call by Mike Kafka here to run this screen against this play call by Dallas. Look at how, when he catches this football, Saquon Barkley, look at what it looks like right ahead of him, right when he catches the ball. Now, some people have, on my timeline, put this play up. Some people have blamed Barkley for this, but look at here. How is that not a first down, right? Like, look at that shot Nick has up on the screen. All we have to have here is Mark Lewinsky locating the right defender, which he totally whiffs on and doesn't locate at the 3rd level or 2nd level, whatever it is. And Jack Anderson, just hold your damn block, dude, instead of just getting totally destroyed by Leighton Vander Esch. So if either of those two, even if just like Jack Anderson does a good job here, Nick, and Glowinski just totally misses picking up 6 here, which he does, I still think Barkley can get the first down and maybe even turn this into a bigger play. But if both those blocks happen, Glowinski and Anderson, if we have a team that like can make those blocks on the, it's a design play. Like that's what they're supposed to do. It's the execution. It's not like we're asking too much in my mind, at least. If both those blocks happen, Nick, I think this could have been like a massive explosive play for Barkley.
It would have been a massive explosive play. You would have had whoever 83 Cager is blocking as a threat. And I think that's Jerron Kearse, who's a really good football player. But I love how Nick Gates right here has the mind to stick with DeMarcus Lawrence. Because look, DeMarcus Lawrence reads screen. He knows that Saquon Barkley is getting the ball. And Nick Gates doesn't kind of climb. He just sticks with Barkley and then chips DeMarcus Lawrence, allowing Barkley to explode upfield. And Dan, what the hell is it about Leighton Vander Esch to where this guy looks like Brian Urlacher every time he plays the Giants?
I don't know. I think he's a good player. Is he not? I haven't followed him too much this year. Has he been struggling outside of the Giants games?
I have no idea, but I
Yeah.
think if he played as well as he does against the Giants, we would be talking a lot more about him as a pivotal part of the defense, which I feel like we did when he was drafted by Dallas, but then he suffered a couple neck injuries and they didn't pick up his 5th-year option, but they still resigned him. And now he's back with Dallas. And I just feel like plays like this, man, he just absolutely stonewalls Jack Anderson in space. And I feel like that is the key reason on a big high leverage situation early in the game, 3rd and 8, why Saquon Barkley doesn't pick up this first down.
It was such a wasted opportunity, man, because this is not that hard of a block in my mind for a guard here. Because even I think that like Vander Esch even kind of takes the wrong step here. It's not like he does a terrible job reading this play out, but he's a bit out of position and wide here. All Anderson really needs to do is just push him further wide, open up that hole there. And Glowinski just obviously, as you're seeing on the tape, like he just totally doesn't locate the guy he's supposed to locate there. So yeah, wasted play here. Back-to-back opportunities they just missed. The deep ball, 2nd and 8, just missed it a little inside. Tough throw. The 3rd and 8, perfectly designed play call by Mike Kafka. Situational play calling for Mike Kafka remains very strong for the Giants. The 4th and 1, this play, a few other plays. The route combinations remain strong for Mike Kafka. There are things I don't like about Kafka. I don't like some of his lack of aggression, I guess I could say, or I don't like some of his 2nd and long run calls. There are definitely things I don't like, but overall, he's still winning these situational play calls at like 3rd and 8 here, where he calls it perfect, 4th and 1. He's still designing good route combinations that are creating space in the pass game. So I don't really understand the hate on Twitter right now for Mike Kafka.
Neither do I. And I won't even say, and I don't want to speak for you, it's not that I don't like certain things about Kafka, but there are situations and scenarios that I feel like he could probably come up with a better play call or a more aggressive play call. But with everything he's working with, I think that has to be taken into
Right.
context. But it's not even like a tendency. Like with Jason Garrett, it was a tendency. With Pat Shermer, it was a tendency. If it was second and long, they were running the freaking football. Like it's not a tendency for Mike Kafka to do that. Have been situations throughout the year where he has done it, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a tendency quite yet.
And I think once they get back Evan Neal, potentially Josh Azudu, potentially Bredesen, and maybe if all three are in the lineup, in addition to Gates and Thomas, things might look a lot different for Mike, like what you guys see from Mike Kafka. Though I think part of the issue, at least right now, is that they've been facing a lot of tough defensive fronts. Like Dallas is a really, really tough defensive front. Washington's going to be a tough defensive front coming up. They really don't have an easy front coming up for a while. Somebody mentioned Indy to me, but Indy has a really good front. Indy, the reason the Eagles were unable to blow out the Colts last week had nothing to do with the Eagles defense. It had everything to do with Indianapolis's interior defensive line with DeForest Buckner and crew. Like that was the reason why the Eagles couldn't run their system, which also gives me a little bit of hope, by the way, that the Giants are going to slow down the Eagles offense. I'm less worried about the Giants pass defense against the Eagles and just overall defense against the Eagles than I am the offense, actually, surprisingly, based on that. But yeah, so I mean, we'll see what happens, but they need these guys back on the offensive line, I think, and then people will be a lot less, people will be more understanding of Kafka. Like right now, like you said, you have to take into account what he's working with.
Yeah, 3 new offensive linemen and not necessarily the best crop of skilled position players. A couple of those guys were on the street just a couple weeks ago or were on practice squads. So that's the situation and he's trying to win football games against arguably the best defense in the league. But let's get into the second drive here.
Yep, second drive here is going to be a 5-play drive that ultimately ends up not going anywhere by like total yards just because they took a penalty there and a sack. But it starts off here with just a PA rollout and a really nice throw here, I thought, by Jones here.
This is a great play by Jones. And this is after the Dallas Cowboys, Mike McCarthy, went for it on 4th and 2 and were absolutely stuffed. So the Giants have the football on their side of the field.
Okay, second offensive possession of the game. This is right after the Cowboys tried that 4th and 2 and inexplicably ran up the middle against the strength of the Giants defense. And it starts off with this PA rollout here. And Jones does a really good job of hitting Chris Myrick on the backside crosser. What I love the most about this play is that it's really built on one trait and one area of Jones's game that has simply proved dramatically this year, and that's his patient on the move as a quarterback. Now, some of this is by design, and some of this is probably reps, and kudos to the coaching staff for giving him the reps and the opportunity to get better with this. But you can see here, he does a great job of rolling to his right, nothing's there, then sliding a bit to his left to reset his throwing lane and his pocket, and then finding, like you said, like I mentioned a bit earlier, the backside crosser here.
This is a very good play design and play individually by Daniel Jones. Watch Chris Myrick, who is the tight end to the boundary side, which is the roll side. He blocks 54 well down the line of scrimmage. All the routes are already distributed at this point. So once 54 is eliminated from the play, Myrick sees that Daniel Jones hasn't released the football and he just climbs upfield. He's an eligible receiver. And then he adjusts his route into the soft zones. I shouldn't even say zones, but into the soft areas of the field. And Jones does a really good job looking backside and finding him through a crowded area where Richie James almost knocks this football out of the air. I felt like this is just a very good play by Jones and Chris Myrick. We'll watch it from the end zone angle, and you'll really see how Daniel Jones is very patient, even though there are guys kind of bearing down on him. He's just waiting. Then he looks to his left and finds that outlet. Great play.
Yeah, and for those who are saying, look, Mike Kafka's too conservative, well, he comes out that first drive throwing, comes out the second drive throwing, and right after this big play, he comes out with another throw on 1st and 10. Unfortunately for this one, the Cowboys did a good job of reading it and designing a play to stop it. The coverage is amazing downfield. There's really nowhere for them to go. And in addition to that, as you saw in the film just there from that end zone angle, the twist crushes Jack Anderson, who just loses really bad on this. This has to hopefully be the last Jack Anderson game. And with the mini bye, I'm hoping it is. This guy's just not an NFL caliber player in my mind. And he's going to just ultimately be bad every game for the Giants if he's in it as far as pass pro goes. But one thing I notice is you also see Tyree Phillips with what I would consider to be not a great rep either, to give up kind of the outside shoulder and allow the pass rusher to get up on him. those are two players we hope to not see after the bye. At least I hope to not see.
Yeah, there's really nowhere for Jones to go with the football. It looks like for a second Saquon Barkley might be open, but Van Der Esch kind of matches him. You can see the linebackers pointing at Saquon Barkley and kind of determining who's going to match Saquon Barkley on this play. Van Der Esch ends up getting out there and taking a good angle. Two guys on Lawrence Cager. Kenny Galladay, or who's that? Isaiah Hodgins is not going to get open. Richie James is matched. So there's just nowhere to go with the ball. And Jack Anderson gets really just abused on that twist up front.
All right, so after that sack, I love the aggressiveness by Mike Kafka to come out on the 2nd-and-17 play and run a play action counter with a 3-level read behind him. This is behind the play. This is a really diverse call. I haven't seen this from the Giants, and what it does is creates a wide open Isaiah Hodgins, who scores the touchdown. Unfortunately for the Giants, it's called back for a penalty. Now, Ross Tucker, who breaks down NFL, did a great job, I think, explaining why this was a bad call by the referees and why it shouldn't have been flagged. Obviously, you could see on the film here, Terry Phillips is past the line of scrimmage. But did you get a chance to listen to Tucker? And obviously, you can break down the play as well, Nick.
I did. First of all, I'll touch on what Ross Tucker said, and it's what a lot of people have parroted. So many people in the NFL have come out and said this is an egregious call. It was an egregious call at the time, and it's because Tyree Phillips is engaged in a block here. This isn't an RPO. This isn't a situation where Tyree Phillips is acting as a eligible man downfield trying to bait linebackers to cover him and be eye candy, if you want to use that term. He's literally just engaged in a block of 96, and then 96 kind of drops to a depth of like 6 yards off the line of scrimmage, and Tyree Phillips realizes and then attempts to get back across the line of scrimmage. I just think this type of call in this situation with the context involved, the rule was not meant for this. And I think this kind of stuff happens sometimes. And Tyree Phillips maybe drifts, takes like 2 steps there, as you could see, and then he jumps back. I just don't think this is in the spirit of why this rule was instituted. It was instituted because of RPOs and things of that nature. And for offensive linemen, ineligible receivers acting as a possible eye candy to get linebackers to bite up, to open up routes behind them. That's not what happened here. This is a play action freaking bootleg where 79 was engaged with a block. And he was just going with the blocker and then realized the blocker was dropping to a depth. So I just think this is an egregious call by the referee here.
Exactly. Think about the intention of Phillips on here. You did a great job breaking that down, Nick. His intention is to block down that defensive end or whoever that is. Like, his intention is not to get out ahead and give the Giants an advantage here. So it's a stupid call. It changes the momentum of a game. It takes away a really well-designed play by Mike Kafka to get a wide open Isaiah Hodgins, and Daniel Jones finds him on the back shoulder, and then he's able to kind of flip his body around and get the touchdown. So just a brutal, devastating call that puts them in 2nd-and-22.
And as for the play call, we talked about how Mike Kafka was using a lot of these play action slides, these play action bootlegs. Well, this one didn't necessarily have this slide element, but this is the play action. They fake the counter. You can see Saquon Barkley step to his right before going left. The Giants pull the backside guard, Mark Lewinsky, and there's a bunch formation to the boundary side, so the opposite side of the counter. Daniel Jones does a great job, similar to what they did so often in the Bears game, selling this play fake. And look at Dallas's defense. They all go after Saquon Barkley. They all think Saquon Barkley has the ball. But then you have Isaiah Hodgins, who is to the field side, so he's a lone receiver. He's going to cross to the intermediate portions of the field. Chris Myrick from the bunch is going to block Micah Parsons, and then Darius Slayton is going to run the vertical to clear out the safeties and occupy those middle of the field defenders, with Richie James running the out route. With Richie James running the out route as the outside receiver from the bunch off the line of scrimmage, that's going to occupy the deep third cornerback, or the cornerback, I should probably just say, because they're not necessarily in a cover 3. It's a little bit hard to tell because of the play action element. 3 latches on to Richie James. So what does that do? That opens up the backside crosser. And Isaiah Hodgins does a really good job noticing this. And you could see he's running along the 15-yard line, and then he starts to drift towards the 10-yard line, gaining depth because 3 matches Richie James. And the other defender who is in the area, what does he have to worry about? Daniel Jones and Daniel Jones' legs. He pays attention to Daniel Jones' legs. Nobody sees Hodgins coming from the backside. That is a great, well-designed call the Giants got jobbed out of.
Yeah, unfortunately. So it puts them in a 2nd-and-22 situation here where they try to come back, run a little bit of a play action post wheel. As usual, we know it. They love the post wheel route combination. It's not open early. The pressure is there. Jones gets hit, and the throw goes out of bounds.
big play action post wheel type of team. And there's just nothing for Jones to throw the football to at this point, and sets up a pretty bad 3rd and 22
Do you think
situation
we'll
where,
see one? This was not an example of where I think they should have, by the way, because it was covered
yeah,
well. Do you think we'll see one throw on the wheel all year? Because they run this concept literally every game. Do you think we'll see one post or wheel thrown this year?
I would hope they do it, but honestly, the throw every time has been the drag from the backside. And
Yep.
this time, the drag from the backside was absolutely eliminated by Trevon Diggs, Leighton Vander Esch. They were all over this play design by the Giants.
Yeah. So far, they've only really thrown, like you said, that backside drag, but I'd love to see them find the post of the wheel. Last week, the wheel was open when they threw the drag that ended up in the fumble by Isaiah Hodgins. So hopefully that's something we'll see change. On this 3rd and 22, I have no idea what was happening here. The Giants are ultimately called for an illegal shift right before the snap and intentional grounding on Daniel Jones. I think it was just I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what happened here.
Yeah, you could see the 86 and 83 are both moving at the same time. That's illegal. 86 needs to be set, or 83 can't move. So that's the illegal shift. And then I think Daniel Jones might have thought he had a free play, and he got a little bit scared when he realized that the right side of his offensive line just fell down and he had 2 Dallas Cowboys blue jerseys kind of in his face. So he just throws the football. Maybe Kenny Golladay was supposed to run a fade against this leverage. It doesn't really look like it because 3 is kind of outside of Kenny Golladay. But I'm just not sure what Daniel Jones was processing or thinking here in an empty formation to throw it out of bounds to force Graham Gano to kick a 57-yard field goal, which Gano executed well because he's Graham Gano, but still, man, that was a really, really poor showing. And the Giants were sloppy in this game. You had plays like this. This is, obviously a 3rd and 22. It's not really a play that's going to be converted all that often. But then you also have the 4th and 1. They go out there with 10 guys on the field. Like little things like that are things that we didn't see earlier in the season. That kind of stuff needs to get cleaned up.
Yeah, you're right. And so ultimately, one more thing I want to show here, if you go to the end zone angle, it's just another example of a really bad play in pass protection from Mark Lewinsky, focusing on 64. So now we've had 2 drives, and Lewinsky has looked pretty damn bad on both of them here. I have no idea what he was doing there. I don't know if it was a communication issue or if he just simply got beat really easily. But that was like Shane Lemieux level bad right there.
So this is a cross chop move from DeMarcus Lawrence, who was in a 2-point stance at about the 4-eye spot, so the inside shoulder of Tyree Phillips, and he runs right at the outside shoulder of Glowinski. Glowinski goes to punch, and watch how DeMarcus Lawrence uses his inside hand to cross chop the outside hand of Glowinski, and then DeMarcus Lawrence takes his outside hand and also furthers that, kind of turns it into almost like a double swipe, and he just completely ghosts Glowinski. Not like a ghost technique, but Glowinski goes to punch and makes very little contact. I'm not even sure if Glowinski contacts DeMarcus Lawrence's chest. I think DeMarcus Lawrence's hands were so quick and efficient that he negated Glowinski from making any sort of contact on his own chest. And then Tyree Phillips tries to cut block another Dallas defender who jumps into DeMarcus Lawrence, and they both fall down. And I think it was at this moment where Daniel Jones realizes Tyree Phillips didn't execute the block, Lewinsky's getting beat, that he's like, oh, I'm just going to throw this away, because he might have believed that it was a encroachment penalty, or just a penalty where the Dallas Cowboys jumped off sides. But that was not the case.
One thing I did notice, though, one last thing I noticed there was just how Jones changed the trajectory on the football. That'll come into play later in this game on the key downs where he did and didn't change the trajectory on his throw. Because it's something he can do. He's capable. He doesn't always have to have that over the top throw. I know it's been taught to him with Cutcliffe. It's a good throw to have in general, but he has changed trajectory at times in this game and in his career. So you'll see that as it comes, because people have discussed that 4th and 1 play, and I'll give my breakdown then. But just one thing to point out for those who are looking for it. But let's get to this 3rd drive here, because once again, the Giants are gifted another good opportunity after intercepting Dak Prescott here. So they put on a field goal in the last one. The first drive you saw, they kind of bogged down and didn't score. But unfortunately, after being gifted this interception, the Giants go 3 and out immediately. And so it starts here with a little zone read run. I'm going to say this, Nick. This is
favorite Nick Gates blocks right here, man.
Okay, so let's see the good then, and let's take a look at that Nick Gates block from the side, from the end zone angle. There he is, 65.
He gets a little help from Glowinski. Glowinski chips the one technique, but watch how Gates finishes his blocks. And look how quick Gates' hands are. Gates' hands get inside. First, he makes contact with the outside portion of the shoulder pad of the one technique, but then he transitions it inside. You can see it right here. Glowinski chips the defender, gets him off balance, and then Gates just uses torque and power to just lift him up and drive him to the ground. These are the types of blocks we need on the interior parts of the offensive line, Dan.
You're damn right they do. We do. And that goes into what we were saying earlier in the top of the podcast. Gates had a really good game. Like, this wasn't a great game for many people on offense. It was a great game for Gates, especially in his first start back. I don't see how the Giants will watch this tape and feel like they should go back to Feliciano. We'll see what actually ultimately ends up happening. But it just doesn't seem to me like this will be something they watch. They look at Gates and they say, okay, let's go back to Feliciano when he's healthy. It seems to me like Feliciano might lose his job. I know Jameis Winston was talking about this a couple of weeks ago. The players, there's supposed to be like an unwritten rule in the NFL. You can't lose your job due to injury. But I feel like part of it is like whenever people say that, it's like, well, it's injury, but it's also like the replacement level value in play for a lineman or whatever position steps in for another player who's injured. Like, okay, yeah, Feliciano shouldn't lose his job just because he got hurt. But what if, when he got hurt, the player who replaced him looked better on film than he did at any point, really? And so it's like, does that you're replacing him because of injury, or are you replacing him because he performed worse when he was in? And so ultimately, I hope the coaching staff sees it that way too.
Yeah, you got to tell Wally Pip that, because if your replacement is playing better than you are, then the replacement should start, in my opinion.
And I'll say this though, Nick. One thing
Meritocracy.
yeah, exactly. One thing I'll say though about this play, it's just okay. Like, good job by Nick Gates. That's the plus to this play. And the negative to this play to me, and I want to get your take on it, is it's a microcosm to me of what's happening now every time the Giants want to run these zone read plays with the option for Daniel Jones to keep it. Every single time now we're seeing a backside defender like we see here respect Jones and completely take away Jones's run. We're also seeing just so many defenders in the box to stop Barkley if Jones hands it. So at that point, to me, I'm seeing so many more examples on the tape of no option on this play. That's a good one. You hand it to Barkley, there's nowhere to really go. And that could also be because, the Giants don't really have the people moving interior offensive linemen to win on double teams and to create so much space. But that is a reality for what they have right now, personnel wise. And every single time, as you'll see on this, the backside guy is respecting Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones can't really keep it either. So I want to see them throw more out of these, use more of the RPO and use more of the pass option at these plays, just because I feel like at this point, the zone read game is pretty dead in my mind, because teams are just not going to go back to not respecting Jones's ability to run.
Yeah, and we saw so many RPO tags in the past, and I think we see some of it in this game as well. On this specific play, if Jack Anderson can kind of scoop this I guess it would be a two technique right here, because the Dallas Cowboys align with the nose and then a two technique. And if Jack Anderson can make that block, he kind of engages the midline of the two technique. If he can get to the outside portion of the two technique, then Andrew Thomas can climb and possibly locate 28, might not be able to get to 55 here, but Jack Anderson goes into the midline, and this allows that defensive lineman, that two technique, to just kind of stack Anderson up. And look at Anderson struggling bad right here. Like, that's a great play by the defensive lineman, but there's a cutback lane because of Nick Gates' block, but it just gets closed down so quickly because the two technique just dominates Jack Anderson. But overall, I understand what you're saying, but I do think better execution up front here might have led to not a huge gain, but just a much better gain than just 3 yards.
Yeah. Sets up a 2nd and 7 where they have a jet sweep with Barkley to the outside. The Cowboys are prepared and ready for it. And Micah Parsons is just such a freak athlete that he just really cuts off any lane for Barkley to try to run through.
Yeah, Micah Parsons is so fun to watch, and it sucks that the Giants had a shot at this dude, and he is not wearing Giants blue. He's in Dallas. But watch how he just stays stride for stride. This is a 4.38 athlete, Micah Parsons, playing edge linebacker, just one of the best defensive players in the National Football League. And you can see how he just stretches Barkley out and only allows Barkley to pick up, I believe, 3 yards on this play. So it's 2 consecutive runs where you got 3 yards to set up a 3rd and 4.
And run it back real quick. Just look at how not fooled Leighton Vander Esch is by this. Like, you have jet sweep where you could potentially, typically you hand it to the running back here. LVE has no interest in following Matt Breida on this play. He goes directly for Saquon Barkley, which, as you'll see later in the game we saw earlier, it helped the Giants too when they faked it to Barkley and used him as Tom loves to say, eye candy. But on this play, they handed it to him on the jet sweep, and there was just nowhere to go.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley was the wing back on this play. So he was coming from the boundary side to the field side. Nobody pays attention to Matt Breida. And like you said, the Giants take advantage of that later, which I appreciate the fact that they notice the incredible amount of attention being paid to 26, which is consistent throughout this season.
Sets up a 3rd and 4 here for the Giants. And, this is one of those examples. This has kind of been a throw that Jones is starting to struggle with a little bit in this game, especially this throw that's kind of in the flat to the receiver. It's not a long throw. It's not a difficult throw, but someone gets in the passing lane. And when someone's been in Daniel Jones' passing lane, we haven't seen his most on target and accurate throws. This is an off target throw by Jones. I would chalk this one up to on the quarterback, especially when you consider the difficulty level of the throw, which is not very high in my mind. Obviously, you have to change the trajectory here. You have a guy in your pass lane, but quarterbacks change trajectory all the time on their throws and are able to complete a pass like this. And so it's a good design by the Giants in my mind. They recognize the leverage pre-snap and that this is going to, be ultimately an option for him, especially when you're running that more vertical route from the inside of where James is lined up. I believe it's Slayton. And so just an off-target throw that goes wide and takes a first down off the board.
Yeah, this is a rough one at this point of the game where the defense comes up with a huge play and you can't capitalize on it. You go 3 and out. Watch Richie James release off the line of scrimmage. Look, he's stemming it inside, selling inside, and you could see how 3 is making an under call right here. Anthony Brown is saying, hey, under. He's pointing at Richie James, but then Richie James just does a really good job smoothly transitioning to the outside, but Jones just misfires. But look at the space that Richie James has. If this ball is on target to James, then he might be able to turn it upfield and get a couple extra yards. If Brown takes a bad angle, maybe it would have been a lot more, and then Donovan Wilson would have had to make a tackle along the sidelines. But either way, just a big missed opportunity by New York.
Yeah, at the very least, it's a conversion if the throw is on target. But, of course, it wasn't, so we have the punt there. And so can't capitalize on the interception. After the 4th and 2 stop, they had a great play. Call back by touchdown called back by penalty, and it just bogged down a drive and set over 3. So a lot of points left on the board so far as we roll into this 4th drive. But finally, the Giants are able to put a touchdown drive on the board with a 9-play, 75-yard drive that starts here with a 4-yard run.
4-yard, nice counter run with Chris Myrick being the motioning sniffer right before the snap. You can see Myrick motion. Jones opens to his right. Barkley kind of fakes it that way, does a little stutter. Glowinski pulls, kicks out Van Der Esch. It's just 92, makes such a good play. Dorrance Armstrong to kind of avoid Chris Myrick's block. Myrick goes for that hip, gets caught leaning, falls over because there's a bunch of trash there. And then he ends up kind of making contact with Barkley, which slows Barkley down. And then Andrew Thomas kind of loses his footing because so many people are around him. And it only ends up going for 4 yards. And I felt like this play, if it was blocked just a little bit cleaner, Thomas is going to take out 33 if his feet don't get tangled up by Dorrance Armstrong. And this could have been a much bigger play, but only goes for 4.
Yep, sets up a 2nd and 6 where they bring on that big 6th offensive lineman as the tight end here. They run a little duo game. What is it, a 4-yard gain? Solid little gain here to set up a 3rd and short.
Yeah, it's a solid little game, but both these double teams up front kind of fail. Like, look how low 91 gets against this double team and how he just keeps Jack Anderson off of him. And then Andrew Thomas tries to get in front of 91 and cross his face to make it a smooth transition with Jack Anderson. But since Anderson lost so badly, Thomas couldn't do that. 91 just gets into the backfield and kind of makes a butt tackle on Saquon Barkley. He almost boxes Saquon Barkley out to number 96, the other player that is being double teamed up front. And Mark Lewinsky loses that rep after Nick Gates gives a good chip and climbs up to Leighton Van Der Esch. So the blocking up front from a continuity standpoint, Dan, has been a very big issue. And that was something that we have applauded the Giants for, at least in the first 5 games of the season. And I don't know if it's just because of the injury. I mean, it makes sense. It's plausible. That's the reason. But for whatever reason, the Giants have not been blocking in a manner that is effective at all, but it also seems like they're not in the best communication on when they're supposed to climb. It doesn't seem like these transitions are going too well.
Yeah, it's a great observation, and that's what's going to happen when you have this makeshift offensive line that's revolving door on the interior offensive line. A lot of different players, and even on this play where you have a 6 offensive line, well, it's a different 6 offensive lineman than you've been having because now Nick Gates is a starter. So I just feel like that's kind of a product of the injuries on the O line in some ways. And that's why things can get better if this O-line can get healthy.
Also, look at Gates finish this block on Van Der Esch. Van Der Esch definitely hand to the face right there on Nick Gates. You can see Gates' helmet almost comes flying off. Gates just keeps driving this guy well after the whistle.
Yeah, this was a play I put on Twitter as well because I thought it was just so funny. At the end of this play, you can see the drive Van Der Esch up after the whistle. Almost looks like Gates tries to draw a penalty on Van Der Esch, like a retaliation penalty on this one, because you can kind of see what he does. Like, let's just watch it one more time. Gates drives him, plays every play through the whistle. This is why I love Nick Gates. Gives him one little extra push, hoping maybe push him back. And you can see over there, Diggs is pointing to it. Like, dude, it's like hoping the refs are like, look at what this guy is doing. Like, give him the penalty.
Exactly. And the Giants end up getting a first down because on 3rd and 2, the Cowboys get that defensive holding penalty where they were holding one of the offensive linemen, I think Jack Anderson, from climbing up to the second level. So that call doesn't happen too often, but it was an obvious one because the linebacker never got picked up when he should have been. Hopefully, Anderson would have been able to make that block. But either way, this sets up a 1st and 10, 6-yard run where the Giants had some traps built in here, a trap the 2 technique or the 3 technique.
Yeah,
let's see which one.
Yeah, we don't see trap too often with the Giants, but here it is. Good example of it. And Jones decides to keep the ball here and ends up taking kind of a decent hit you don't want him to take here, but does maneuver well to get some yardage.
He fumbles the football too, but the ball
Yeah.
just kind of falls right underneath him. And you can see how Jack Anderson comes out of his stance and he's trapping that 3 technique. And then you have Mark Lewinsky attempting to trap that 6 technique. And Andrew Thomas realizes, okay, I'm going to climb up to the second level. But Saquon Barkley doesn't get the football. Jones keeps it. Micah Parsons is just right on him, man. Like white on rice, dude. Like Micah Parsons is dialed. Look how athletic that dude is. And how look at his footwork. Boom, boom. You have nowhere to go. I'm going to force you inside. There's a bunch of Dallas defenders. It's kind of a miracle the Giants got 6 yards here.
I've seen a lot of impressive players on tape so far this year, Nick. Jeffrey Simmons was incredible against the Giants in his first game. Random guys have been incredible. Matabuke for Baltimore was incredible.
Aleem McNeil.
Lee McNeil, but no one has looked on film like Micah Parsons. They unfortunately stole the draft with him. I mean, the Giants had an opportunity at him. We know that. We don't need to go over that. But Cowboys got this dude after the first 5 picks. He's obviously should have been, if not first pick over. There's a case to be made. He should have been the first pick overall, given the impact that he makes. And he's just becoming this like difference-making, franchise-altering pick, unfortunately, for the Cowboys.
What makes it so frustrating is the Giants were in the linebacker market, supposedly, because they wanted Jamin Davis that year. Now, I'm thinking, was it the character concerns for the hazing incidents back at Penn State? Was it the fact that he did not play the year prior because of COVID? Were those the reasons why Micah Parsons weren't on the Giants board? I'm not sure, but this is going to be something that for the next 10 plus years, we're going to be like, damn it, we're playing Dallas. Damn it, they have Micah Parsons. And that's just the reality we have to live with right now.
And I've heard from some people who I trust, who are pretty good with at least for what they've given me in the past, that the Giants were dead set on finding a quote unquote playmaker for Daniel Jones with that first round pick. So they were locked in. And that says obviously it played out in a way that kind of leads to that being the case. Because once they traded back, they didn't take Christian Darrisaw or anything like that. They took Kadarius Toney. And it's just so ironic if Micah Parsons wasn't on their board for character concerns when they take Kadarius Toney, who they then have to trade for pennies on the dollar a year later partially because he wasn't, from what I've heard, he wasn't a good locker room fit. And Micah Parsons, not a single peep of a bad locker room fit since, right? He had that stupid hazing thing, which every Penn State fan I've talked to said was completely overblown and nothing to worry about. And then 0 character concerns from this point on. Now, part of it is Dan Quinn too, right? Like he was a middle linebacker, Penn State. He was recruited as a 5-star edge. But then Penn State converted him to a linebacker. Dan Quinn probably drafted him to the Cowboys. Maybe they thought he was a linebacker, but they realized early on, wait a second, he's even better as just an edge pass rusher. And so he's basically moved and converted to an edge rusher with the Cowboys. So I'm hoping the Giants could have done that with their staff, but that's not even a guarantee.
No, it's not. I think we would have saw last year, at least, Patrick Graham definitely use him in that manner because we were seeing Leonard Williams be used in that manner. And I think Graham was flexible enough to where he would have done that, but we never got the shot to at least see that, which is unfortunate.
But anyway, that keeper sets up a 2nd and 4 here, where they have a 1-yard run by Gary Brightwell here with a split zone, orbit motion before the snap with Saquon Barkley for eye candy. This time, Dallas doesn't really buy into the orbit motion with Saquon Barkley. So actually, honestly, it would have been nice if they just faked it to Brightwell and handed it to Barkley. I think he could have maybe done something with that. But to me, what I noticed here is just a further, cementing of what we've seen throughout this game. The interior offensive line struggling with double teams up front. Look at just Jack Anderson and Nick Gates on this one. I mean, they have a double team on 97, and yet despite them having a double team on 97, or I think it was Anderson and Gates, or 98, sorry, not 97. Despite that, he's still able to come off and make a play on this.
Yeah, 98 just kind of dominates Jack Anderson at the point of attack. Now, Gates is kind of hitting the outside hip of 98, or the inside hip, I guess I should say, and climbing up to 33. But Anderson does not have the power or the ability at this moment to sustain those types of blocks. But even Jerron Kearse is coming downhill, filling this alley. There's just really nowhere for Gary Brightwell to go. And even on the backside, Mark Lewinsky loses badly to Odigizua, who there should be a hole theoretically if Mark Lewinsky can get to the inside portions of Odigizua here, but you could see Odigizua just sits right into the A gap, and Brightwell has to bounce this outside at this point, and he does, and there's just nowhere for the guy to go. Only a 1 yard gain.
And these are just examples of plays and yards the Giants left on the field with their inability to operate double teams in the blocking game with what's left on the interior offensive line. Definitely an area they need to get healthier on. Sets up a 3rd and 3, though, after just a 1 yard gain. And the Giants do a good job converting this one to Richie James. This time, again, not, in my mind, the throw you want to see here. Let's be honest, it's an easy throw into the flat. I get it. There's pressure. And that's why he ultimately can change the trajectory a little bit of this pass. And it's a completed pass. So I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm not trying to get on Jones. There's pressure. I get it. But it was a full extension here from Richie James to make this catch.
Yeah, this was an incredible catch by Richie James. But it's difficult for Jones because there's an unblocked defender bearing down on him, and he doesn't even get to follow through. His arm gets hit. This could have been like broken finger type of situations. But James just makes a great effort here. This is another high leverage type of play, 3rd and 3, and Richie James is able to convert this. The Giants love this type of concept because Dan Quinn likes to run cover 3. He's been running a lot more. I think he's been running more cover 3 than cover 1 this season, which deviates from what he did last year, but it's also the same of what he used to do, I should say, from back in his days with Seattle when they ran a ton of cover 3. Look at Isaiah Hodgins' release. There's a stack to the field side with Richie James inside of Isaiah Hodgins off the line of scrimmage, and Hodgins runs directly at Richie James' defender and makes contact with the outside hip of 26, which kind of helps create this separation. If James catches this pass in stride and doesn't have to kind of lose his balance catching it and fall forward, could have been maybe a bigger gain because Hodgins clips the hip of 26.
Yeah, agreed. He could have created some separation. I don't want to blame Jones, so I'm sorry for saying that earlier. It's not on Jones. It's a tough throw with the pressure in his face. But then again, obviously, if the ball was, like you said, in stride, it could have been a bigger gain. So either way, they convert, sets up a 1st and 10, and you have a little downhill. Or what is this one? You have we're still on the James play. It sets up a 1st and 10 here where you get a little downhill run from Saquon Barkley. Nice 6-yard gain.
Yeah, good 6-yard gain finally for this Giants rushing attack that has not been able to really get anything going. And one of my favorite parts of this play is Nick Gates. Nick Gates pulls around Mark Lewinsky's pin pull. And what does Nick Gates do? He picks up Jerron Kearse, who's a safety. And people are like, yeah, he's a safety. He should do this. It is very difficult for an offensive lineman to pick up a box safety like Jerron Kearse, who's like 6'4", 220 pounds, and slam him to the ground like Nick Gates does on this play. Nick Gates, look at how he engages contact here. He lowers himself while he's on the move, then raises Kearse and literally like plants him. That is such a good play by Nick Gates to help clear this hole and remove a box defender where Saquon Barkley picks up 6 yards when they have not really done anything on the ground at this point.
Yeah, first gain of 5+ yards for this Giants run offense, and created in a lot of ways because of what Nick Gates is able to do, taking Kearse out of the play with just a perfect, drive pancake, whatever you want to call it, block. This is a nasty block from Gates. Is my favorite play from him on film in the whole game film, and it was just awesome to see. I mean, look, you can say what you want about it being a safety. He should do that, like I know you just mentioned, but have we seen that all year? No, right? And I don't really remember too many times where the opposing team has had a center come around, pull, and drive one of our safeties into the ground like that. So I think this is one of the better blocks I've seen from any Giants offensive lineman this year.
It wasn't even like a drive into the ground either. He literally like makes contact and then lifts him up, him up like a child like if you freeze it right here, if you're watching on YouTube, Curse's feet are off the ground, and the only contact with anything that he has is with Nick Gates. Nick Gates is suspending Curse's weight in the air in order to just slam him on the ground like that. Like that is very impressive stuff right there.
Just awesome to see. Truly great play by Nick Gates. It sets up a 2nd and 4 here. And here we go. This is the shot play by the Giants. One thing I wanted to say earlier, which I'll say again, is I just love how the Giants are willing to take a shot play on 2nd and 4 here, on 2nd and 8 earlier. Don't always just try to look for the sticks. If you see the look you want, like you have here, this middle of the field closed safety, one high safety, you can see. Darius Slayton has speed. You can see the corner starts to drop off and respect the speed of the snap, but it doesn't matter because Slayton is still too fast and accelerates too much. And then just great play at the end by Darius Slayton to high point. This is exactly what you're taught as a receiver here. High point the football and come down with it.
Exactly. And look at the formation. Marcus Johnson, Darius Slayton, both outside.
Also, it was Johnson. I was right. Yeah, I thought I remember Johnson there.
Yeah, Marcus Johnson, Darius Slayton, both outside the numbers. Daniel Jones looks to his left to hold the safety, gets the one-on-one matchup, as you brought up before. Excellent play by Darius Slayton, and Anthony Brown's in the press alignment, but he bails. He bails to give himself some cushion against Darius Slayton. And even still, like Anthony Brown is in great position to make a play on this football.
Right.
But Jones throws a good ball, and Darius Slayton adjusts very well to the football to make the contested catch. And what have we said about Darius Slayton? It's like, yeah, man, his rookie season, Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton, anytime they had a one-on-one matchup, he would always win these contested catch situations, and he hasn't for so long. Well, now he is again. Like he's making plays like this. This is a true 50-50 football right here where Darius Slayton climbs the ladder and makes the catch over Brown with the safety bearing down. Like this is just phenomenal stuff from Darius Slayton.
Really is. This is like you can't really speak to how great of a play this is by the receiver here. Again, corner moves off at the start of the snap. He still has the speed to create a little bit of a step and separation, but even then he still has to high point the football at the end of the play, and he's able to do that and come down with the football. Great play by Darius Slayton here. Good throw by Daniel Jones too.
Very good throw by Daniel Jones, especially because Mark Lewinsky just loses so bad to 99. Like this is Shane Lemieux 2020 type of territory. This game specifically, like it's been bad all season, but right here he loses right at the snap. Like Mark Lewinsky goes to punch, 99 just gets right around him. Like
yeah, what is he doing there? Like
Mark Lewinsky has such a soft shoulder. Watch, he's trying to make contact with his outside arm. Mark Lewinsky is, and 99 just violently chops it down. But then he just never like replaces it. I'm not sure if Glowinski thought he was going to have help from Tyree Phillips, but Tyree Phillips has to pay attention to DeMarcus Lawrence. Even though he has a chipping tight end to that side, you still have to pay attention because Chris Myrick is just chipping. So Daniel Jones has 99 right in his face as he throws this football. And it's basically right as Daniel Jones is coming off to hit his back foot from looking that safety off. And then he knows he has the one-on-one matchup, and now he sees 99 right in his face, and he still has that release to get rid of the football over his head like this. That's a good throw by Daniel Jones. Might not be pinpoint accuracy, but he gives his guy a chance to make the play, and that's all you got to ask for in that type of circumstance.
Yep. And they finally, they take a shot here on 2nd and 4, and look at what can happen. They took 2 shots against these middle of the field closed looks, both to Slayton. They averaged 22 yards per attempt. That is more than enough reason for me to keep going back to the well and risking maybe, getting yourself in the 3rd and long and having a punt, whatever it may be. I'd rather take a chance like this.
And Dallas was in middle of the field closed type of looks. It must have been at least like 60 to 65% of the time in this game. Like they were in a lot of cover.
Play the Giants in those looks,
exactly
more than they play any other team. Nobody respects this Giants deep passing game. One thing you can do to get them to respect the passing game is take shots against those look early and often. Now, you probably only trust one player to make those plays, and that's Darius Slayton. That's fine. Use Slayton, take those shots, force the defense to play you a little bit differently. And that could open up the zone read run game again. That can open up different things in the run game you want to do, or even different things in the passing game. So I'm just happy they're finally getting to the point where they're like, you know what? Screw it. Let's take these shots against these looks. Defenses don't want to respect our deep passing game at all. There's so much disrespect paid to it with the way they align pre-snap. Fine, then take a shot and at least make them try to respect it.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time in the second half, as we'll see, there was much more quarters and too high type of looks because they knew the Giants had to pass the football because they were down so much. But even despite that, early in the game, there were a ton of middle of the field closed looks. And like you said, I'm glad the Giants tried to challenge it. On the quarterback sneak that we just saw, Leighton Vander Esch made a great individual play to stop Daniel Jones. And then Saquon Barkley just runs this touchdown in off of a good block from Nick Gates. As you can see, the double team, Nick Gates, Jack Anderson. Gates gets a hold of Odigizua and pushes him just out of the way. And then we have Glowinski up and kind of went away, but Glowinski kind of just does enough to get in the way and allow that touchdown to come about. I'll bring it back up here real quick. Glowinski kind of just falls towards the feet of 33 and 28, creating a wall. Saquon Barkley gets in, which is good for Saquon because if we're going to be honest here, he just doesn't really look the same right now. I'm really hoping that this bye week treats him well, this mini bye week, I should say.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, unfortunately, with where they're at right now. And it may just be, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look into it, but I'm curious, like, how many backs had his massive workload in the first half. I mean, you think about that Houston game right after the bye, they just ground him down. They gave him, what, 35 carries? Was it 35 or 36 carries in the game?
35 carries. Yep.
Most of his career. I just like you like Jonathan Taylor, his rookie season and last season as well, came on strong at the end of the season and had like massive workloads, but he wasn't really used earlier in the first half of the season in both seasons. Saquon was pounded and grounded in the first half of this season, so it's like the second half comes along, and so far, you're right, he hasn't looked as explosive and fresh. Hopefully, the mini bye can help. Could also be the shoulder injury. You might not be want him to run as physically with a bum shoulder,
which makes sense. And again, this is somebody who has been injured basically the last 2 seasons. You can even include 2019, but he finished that season so damn strong that like I kind of exclude it. But the torn ACL in 2020, last year he had a couple different injuries, and then this year he's the true workhorse and he has so much potential and he's so good. But right now the Giants inside looking out of the playoff picture, but they have a tough schedule. This team wants to run the football, and you have defenses like Washington, Indianapolis. Like the easiest defense that they're facing are the Vikings, who can put up like 40 points. Yeah. Like this, it's some good run defenses. Jordan Davis might be back for Philadelphia. He got 2 games against them, so it's going to be.
And even now with Sue and Joseph, they look like they almost immediately improved that run D with those two.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. And now we can get into this. What is it? The 5th drive of the game. Another
5th drive. Giants are up 10-7 at this point, so they actually have a lead and ability to kind of put their foot on the gas and try to command this football game and get a bigger lead. But this drive ultimately ends up going with another 3 and out here. It starts with a throw that Darius Slayton drops. The ball placement is okay on this one. I don't think it's bad or good personally because it's a short throw. I still think it should have been caught though. It's a solid throw, and just they try to take advantage of the off leverage here. But I think partially because of where Diggs is aligned, that's kind of why Daniel Jones throws it where he needs to. So I would put this one on Slayton.
It's actually not Diggs. It is Anthony Brown. And I was actually wondering while watching this tape, we didn't really see too much Diggs on Slayton, specifically in the first half. But I'm pretty sure they've traveled Diggs around before. I don't think I'm mistaken there.
No, you're right about that. They traveled him around versus Justin Jefferson and limited him big time. So I wonder why that is the case.
Yeah, he was on Hodgins a lot of the game, but that's why Daniel Jones puts this throw to the outside shoulder because Brown's coming down, but it's maybe a little bit too far outside. Still something that Slayton should have caught, but it was dropped and it set up a 2nd and 10 with the Giants come out with 6 offensive linemen in their quote unquote 13 personnel package if you want to include one of those offensive linemen as tight ends, which I mean typically people don't, but all 3 of those extra blockers are on one side.
Yeah, and this is just another example on film of the Giants struggling up front with these double teams. It was the big story of why their running game was so disappointing against the Cowboys. For me, at least, it's just they have a lot of these double teams set up, and they're not winning these double teams here. I mean, you could see, for me, I think this could have been a really big play if, you know, that side of the line that has Andrew Thomas. Like, if Andrew Thomas is able to make that play and make this block, and it's not just Thomas here. I think you can look at the double team. You can look at kind of 70 on this play. But if this block is made, there is a lane right there for Saquon to cut back into, but obviously, you know, they're not able to make this play. I believe that's 97 who ultimately makes the play, but 97 is getting double teamed here. Like, you should be able to eliminate him on a double team. So I don't want to say it's all Andrew Thomas. He has little help with the center, or I'm sorry, with the left guard here with Anderson, and then he tries to climb and take out Van Der Esch, but 97 makes the play on this. He's getting double teamed, Nick. Am I wrong to think that 97 shouldn't be making the play on this?
You're not wrong to think that, but what Dallas does post snap is a big reason why this this ended up being a failure for the New York Giants, because you have 97, who's essentially a two technique directly over the top of the guard. Andrew Thomas and Jack Anderson engage the block, but Leighton Vander Esch does a good job coming right downhill, so Jack Anderson has to quickly climb. Andrew Thomas, though, is fully capable of taking advantage of Odigizua, who's a good player, but he should win that matchup. But if you look at what 54 does against number 70, the big offensive lineman, he slants right inside of the C gap and then contacts Odigizua and Andrew Thomas, and it kind of furthers Odigizua's momentum towards the gap, the A gap.
Right. That's a good point.
And that's a big reason why 97 is able to kind of quote unquote dominate Andrew Thomas, as some would say, because he doesn't here. This is 54's path, and then 70 contacting 54 into Andrew Thomas to kind of put 97 right where the running gap is. I think this could have been a big play if 54 doesn't make a great play shooting inside, because 33 kind of goes to the left and he takes himself out of the play of where that A gap is. Vander Esch is picked up, it looks like, by Jack Anderson. It's difficult to say if he would have been able to sustain that block. And then 79 does a pretty poor job on Micah Parsons, just sets way too far outside for an inside running play. And then Micah Parsons ends up splitting. But I think if Barkley is able to just put his foot in the ground and 97 isn't in the way, it's going to be Barkley against 28, and it'll probably be like, an 8-yard gain, nothing too spectacular. But the blocking up front wasn't terrible, other than 54 pushing 97 right into the direction. Good overall play. I don't know if it was by design by Dan Quinn, but execution wise, it definitely worked for the Dallas Cowboys.
That's a great observation, because he did move his momentum there. And if he doesn't, their cutback lane is there, and it's a big play for the Giants. Could have changed this whole drive. Instead, it sets up a 3rd and 8 situation where the Cowboys come out in like a quarters look. And so you'll see here they're really set up to defend this play well, I thought. Tried to run the drag with Cager. There's no real clear out for him, so there's really nothing even if this throw gets completed. And obviously the key player on this play is Micah Parsons, who does a good job winning up the arc against Andrew Thomas, forcing Daniel Jones to step up. By the time he steps up, there's nowhere to go with the football.
Yeah, so pre-snap, it's a quarters look, but watch how Dallas plays this. How many times this season have we talked about how Mike Kafka designs the backside drag from a 3-by-1 set off of clear out routes from the front side? Leighton Vander Esch doesn't fall for it. He passes Richie James off and then just sinks. Look at Leighton Vander Esch, how his eyes go right to the backside, and he knows that drag is coming. It's like Dan Quinn was a little bit aware of the tendencies of Mike Kafka, and you can also look at number 6, who's in that pre-snap quarters look. He fakes like he's dropping to see what Cager is doing. He sees that Cager is going on a drag and then just drops right underneath. See that? That's they were paying attention to that backside receiver, that backside drag. Cager's a good athlete too, but Dallas was all over this. Daniel Jones just kind of threw it in that area, thinking that the drag might be open off the clear out, but it just wasn't. And we can see from the end zone angle, Micah Parsons shot out of a freaking cannon against Andrew Thomas. And I'm surprised Andrew Thomas is even able to recover there. That just kind of speaks to Andrew Thomas, how Andrew Thomas is able to flip his hips, get that hand on the small of the back, and then the front side of the deltoid and just wash Parsons up the arc. But Jones has to step up, and unfortunately, the Giants can't really protect much up front. Jack Anderson is just not even paying attention to the fact that there's a looper right by him, and DeMarcus Lawrence hits Daniel Jones pretty hard at the deck. Incomplete pass.
That's a special-looking pass rush rep from Micah Parsons against arguably the best, if not one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Like, you don't see reps like that a lot. I haven't seen many reps like that against Thomas all year.
No, you don't. And I think was this the play that I put in the notes? I was like, Kenny Galladay is just absolutely cooked. Let's see.
No, there's another one you were talking about. I think it was earlier in the game.
Poor Kenny Galladay, man. But it is a struggle watching him kind of run routes and not even ever get any looks. Like, he's against Trevon Diggs here, and you can see Diggs it doesn't even look like he's taking him seriously. Like, he's just like right there on the hip of him the entire time.
Yeah, Galladay's totally shot. It seems like just an epic failure of a signing at this point, and they'll get out of the deal next year, but sadly they'll take on like a shit ton of dead cap, because Dave Gettleman set up that first year where it was just like 1.4 million against the cap. And like, again, if you're going to sign a 3-year 72 million and you're only taking a 1.4 mil cap hit in the first year, what does that mean? Well, it means the cap hits are going to be massive for those next 2 years. So it is what it is. I don't even know what to say. It is what it is at this point with regards to Galladay and that whole thing. But that ends the drive. Now we get the 6th drive, which is an 8-play, 44-yard field goal drive at the end of the half. Good on the Giants for actually trying to score at the end of the half and successfully doing so here, and their ability to kind of score on the end of the half. Now, this is a very interesting first play here that I wanted to break down and go over, because last week, I thought I saw one of the best plays from Daniel Jones all season from just a mental processing standpoint. He went through read 1, read 2, and came back to Wan'Dale Robinson on the right side of the field. And it was just like a little 7-yard gain, I think, or a 10-yard gain. It wasn't a point. The play wasn't the big gain. It was how fast he moved through his progressions. Here, what I love from Jones is he goes through his full field progression so fast and realizes, based on what he sees post snap, that he is going to have an opportunity here to hit a big play on the right side of the field. The problem is this play is not made possible because the pass protection on the right side of the offensive line breaks down so quick. We'll see that from the end zone angle. This one kind of shows you, just the opportunity he had on the right side of the field on that route. But you'll see just a simple twist up front destroy Tyree Phillips and Mike Lewinsky.
Yeah, the protection really failed the Giants on this play. If you watch it, pre-snap looks like middle of the field closed. Possibly could be cover 2 if the safety who is down over the 3 receiver side rotates to a deep half, which is exactly what happens. But the Giants had a cover 2 beater built into this play. Watch how the safeties both kind of expand into deep half, cover 2, Tampa 2, with Leighton Vander Esch just bailing to the deep middle part of the field. Because in Tampa 2, that middle linebacker sinks to a much deeper depth. But you have Darius Slayton, arguably your most explosive player on offense, not named Saquon Barkley, exploding up the middle of the field in a potential one-on-one matchup against Leighton Vander Esch. What does that do? That forces that safety that is to Tanner Hudson's side, who is the wide receiver who ends up getting targeted here, to flip his hips and pay attention to Darius Slayton. So now you have a cover 2 defense where Tanner Hudson is releasing outside. He's aligned outside the numbers as well, running right up the sideline, like basically hugging the sideline with the flat defender turned towards the line of scrimmage and the safety paying attention to the streaking Darius Slayton. So you have that honey hole shot. And Daniel Jones, to his credit, he notices it, man. He realizes it. He sees that the safety is staying. Yep. He sees that the safety is staying on Darius Slayton. You can see it with his eyes right here. He's checking. He sees what the safety's doing. He sees the safety's leverage, and he knows he's going to have that cover 2 shot. But damn, the New York Giants, even though they have 3 blockers on one side, they can't contain 2 guys on a twist, and Daniel Jones gets hit. But this could have been a solid play. It wouldn't have went for a touchdown with Tanner Hudson as the receiver. But look at Tanner Hudson. He has a lot of space there with the safety paying attention to that streaking guy up the middle of the field.
Yeah, just look, man. You got 3 guys to block 2 guys, and it's an immediate pressure. That is as big of an offensive line failure as you'll see all game here from Mark Lewinsky and Tyree Phillips. They don't pass off the twist, which is all bad to begin with, and that's what you have. You have an immediate pressure despite having Gates, Lewinsky, and Phillips all against that just 2 men from the Cowboys.
And I think this play design seems specifically designed to attack cover 2. Because you have Darius Slayton streaking up the middle. It's like the Giants knew they were going to come out and cover 2. Because what is that safety? That safety is somewhat in conflict now. It's either you're going to allow Darius Slayton to be one-on-one with Leighton Vander Esch in the middle of the field, or you're going to give Tanner Hudson all this space outside. And I think Daniel Jones made the right read to go to Tanner Hudson because that safety is inside the numbers with his hips totally oriented towards Slayton. Like it would be very difficult for him to flip his hips and get back to Tanner Hudson. Just a shame. Another missed opportunity because the blocking is just horrendous in this game.
Yeah, just horrendous pass pro there. Takes away a big potential hole shot, which we haven't seen the Giants even attempt many of the hole shots this season. I'd love to see them attempt more. Illegal hands to the face sets up the play you're watching now, which is a 1st and 10 double dig throw to Darius Slayton here. What I thought was interesting to look at is just look at the top of the screen versus the bottom of the screen and the difference in the leverage and the space allowed by the. We have a press alignment against Hodgins at the bottom of the screen. And at the top of the screen, we have a corner playing 10 yards off the ball against Darius Slayton. I've read a lot on Twitter I've seen a couple people say on Twitter that, Darius Slayton's not playing that well. Defenses still don't respect him. Well, you want an example of defenses respecting him? This is an example of that. He burned them earlier deep, and look how much further the corner is playing off the ball on this rep, which allows for this double dig in the area. I don't know what people are watching, and I think a lot of it, I'm not going to explain right now, Nick, why a lot of it I think is said. I think some of it is just kind of like a propaganda type thing to kind of be like, cement how bad the situation is for the quarterback. But Darius Slayton's playing better than anyone realizes right now, apparently, it seems, to me at least, Nick. Certainly better than he's given credit for. ESPN has him as the 3rd best receiver at getting open, creating separation right now. He's 7th in yards per target. I mean, I don't know what more people are looking for from a wide receiver, and I'm not saying this is sustainable, and I'm not saying I want to sign him to a huge contract. I don't know yet, but over this last month and change, or whenever he started to take on this role, he has been a really good weapon for the Giants. At worst, he would be a number 2 receiver on most teams right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Darius Slayton's playing very well at this point, and you have to respect his speed. You were already beat twice deep. Now, one of them wasn't completed, but it was you gave up the leverage that where Daniel Jones put maybe a better pass, it would have been completed. So Anthony Brown has to respect that. And you align Trevon Diggs just in press coverage, and you're just like, look, Isaiah Hodgins, you're not going to create any separation against me. And that's exactly what happens. The safety is aligned on that same hash as Daniel Jones, and he's just paying attention to Daniel. Daniel Jones opens up to the left, and that safety starts bailing over the top just in case this is a vertical throw. So the Cowboys were tracking on it as well, but this is just a quick little dig. Ends up going for 14 yards because Darius Slayton catches it, and then he picks up extra yardage after the catch until Brown and Wilson bring him down.
Yeah, it was good creativity by Slayton after the catch to find that little void to create the
We
extra
all,
4 or 5 yards.
yeah, we also see Andrew Thomas get a little bit of help from Saquon Barkley on Micah Parsons. At this point, it's not like Micah Parsons is beating Andrew Thomas, but you still need to figure out a way to slow this guy down because he's such a game wrecker, which we'll see a lot in the second half.
Okay, it sets up a 1st and 10 situation here where Jones is flushed out of the pocket here, creates a little 8-yard run, an 8-yard run from it. I'll say one thing from looking at the sideline angle that I personally think on this one. Okay, look, Jones is not like Patrick Mahomes. I understand that, but what I'm just trying to say when I'm making this point is here. Look at the end of this play. Look at where Jones escapes. Point it right there, and right when Tanner Hudson puts his hand up when he freelances this route a little further earlier, roll back a little bit when he puts his hand up right here. So Jones, it looks like he's keeping his eyes down the field. Maybe sees Hudson put his hand up even. I understand, like, this is not a throw a lot of quarterbacks will make. I personally, though, am looking for quarterbacks who will make this throw sometimes because we have so many examples of broken plays this year where there haven't been any downfield throws. I don't think I can remember one attempt here. I would love Jones to just give Hudson a chance to make this play. Will he throw him a little ahead and will it maybe lead to that safety coming back and making a play on it? Sure, but you can make a tough contested catch, especially in today's game, Nick, where the rules suggest that you can't really like drive down as a safety and like go for the because you might get a helmet to helmet hit. And we've seen that happen a lot in this game. And so like, I get it. Look, I'm not blaming him for this play. I'm not trying to, people call it nitpicking, but I would just like to see some creation and a little bit of downfield creativity on some of these broken plays here. Like, just give Hudson a chance to kind of make a play on that.
I don't think that's unfair, but I also just think he's taking the conservative route at this point.
Yeah, it's a conservative route for sure, and it's 8 yards, and I get it. It's just like occasionally I'd like to see our quarterback take the more aggressive route and try to make some kind of creative. Like people say this never happens. Well, I see Mahomes make these plays all the time, and I know it's Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, but he's not the only one. Josh Allen makes these plays. I've seen Justin Herbert make these plays. I've seen Joe Burrow make a lot of these types of plays. I just want to see some more downfield shots and some more aggression on the.
It is across his body though. Like that's the one. He's like near the numbers. Yeah,
it's a tough throw, and he has to make it immediately. Like right when Hudson puts his hand up, the ball has to be released. He doesn't have time to do anything else there, and it's a tough throw. It's a difficult throw. I get it. I'm not blaming him. Not nitpicking him. He ends up with a fine decision here. It's the conservative route. Maybe the coaches say it's the best route, but just sometimes I'd like to see. There's a play earlier this season where he rolled to his right. David Sills had a double move, and David Sills was like wide open down the right sideline, and he didn't throw that ball either. There's a few others that I remember where it's just similar type of situation. It's okay. I get it. It's conservative. It's a tough throw, but just occasionally I'd like to see them take a chance on these.
Yeah, we haven't really seen much of those kind of plays. He usually just keeps the football like he did on this. And 8 yards, I mean, I'm going to sign up for that instead of putting the football in, I guess, harm's way. I'm not really sure if that's safety, if that's Donovan Wilson, I think it might be, is going to be able to make a play on the football if Jones throws it. But this is so bang, bang. Like I'm sure the coaching staff is probably telling Jones, like, if you don't love it, don't take it. That's at least what can assume, I guess, throughout this season and everything that we've seen so far from this offense and Jones' proclivity to consistently take the football in these situations. I think it's probably a coaching point because Jones throughout his career has had a knack of turning the football over in similar situations. But either way, hopefully sometime this year we'll see something that's a little bit that deviates from that because the Giants do need to create explosive plays through the air, but I don't hate his decision there. And I don't think you do either. You're just saying that it'd be nice to see that for once, like see like that Patrick Mahomes type of play, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That you nailed it. And I think it is a coaching point, but I guess my question would be like that wasn't a coaching point for Josh Allen, right? The last quarterback that Dable coached, he had him take those shots and Josh Allen takes those shots. There was a lot of space there in front of Tanner Hudson. Like there's just no chance in hell I don't see Josh Allen making that throw there. I mean, Josh Allen's a great runner, so maybe he just lowers his head and tries to get like 15. But I know it wasn't a coaching point for the last quarterback Dable coach. And so to me, it's just something to consider from a 30,000 foot view. Do we want our friend? Do we want to commit long term to a player who's a little bit more conservative in these spots?
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand where you're going with that.
Especially if you're coaching him to be more conservative.
Yeah, and you're doing that for a reason too. Like
That's
if
what I mean. Yeah.
if you were confident in the quarterback to actually make that throw, you're not going to be like, hey, I know you can make it, but pick up those 8 yards with your legs. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but we'll move on. They pick up 8 yards here. Then there's a Jack Anderson false start, which leads to a 2nd and 7 here. Nice little play designed by the Giants. I've seen them use this one a lot to clear out that little middle hook area for Tanner Hudson or whoever the tight end is. They've used multiple different tight ends in this spot. 10-yard gain for the first.
It's another cover 2 defense. You could see how not really 100% certain what type of defense Dallas is in from a pre-snap standpoint. And then both of the players who are outside of the hashes drop to a deep half. And then you kind of have almost like a Tampa 2 robber situation where the middle of the field safety pre-snap just kind of sits into the Tampa 2 spot. And really good play by Tanner Hudson to loop around the end man on the line of scrimmage who drops off into middle hook and right in front of the Tampa 2 defender and make the catch, present his hands. Easy read for Daniel Jones to look at Richie James or Tanner Hudson. And that one route by Richie James, the drag kind of extends the one middle hook away. Daniel Jones reads it, fires a good ball to pick up the first down after a Jack Anderson false start that probably sent Brian Dable irate.
Yeah, Jack Anderson, not Brian Dable's favorite guy in this game. Really, at any point. Remember, he yelled at him earlier this year.
Yeah, that was last week. Look at Glowinski get a piece of Parsons who tries to loop around. A little bit of a clip there, but that happens all the time. It happens to the Giants as well. There was a really bad one on one of those long runs that we'll see tomorrow or whenever we do that podcast.
Yep, clock ticking. So I think we can just kind of run through these next 2 plays. They weren't really anything too spectacular. They'll fast forward here. They tried to get Barkley toward the sideline so he could catch it and get out of bounds, which he does, but no space created. Not great blocking there. And then they just kind of run to set up the field goal here.
Yep, just a little Saquon Barkley run where Micah Parsons almost makes the play through a double team block. Like, geez, man, Micah Parsons almost gets a face mask, but see the double team on 96, Neville Gallimore is pretty solid from Nick Gates, man. Whenever Nick Gates was engaged in a lot of these double teams, the play wasn't as bad, There were some where maybe it wasn't ideal because of the defender's actions and the lack of ability from Jack Anderson or Mark Lewinsky. But yeah, man, Nick Gates, some of these blocks have been pleasant to see because the interior offensive line has just been horrendous.
Yeah, Gates was one of the few bright spots in this game. So we move on to halftime here. So then we have the 7th drive of the game, which is a 6-play, 20-yard drive. That's a turnover on downs by the Giants. This comes after a long Dallas Cowboys drive, a 14-play drive with the penalty to extend it that we both think was bogus. But ultimately, they put a touchdown on the board to go up 14-13. So now half the third quarter is already dead. You really need to come up with some kind of creativity and some kind of spark on offense to keep to not lose the momentum here. And they start off with a really nice play here. Again, it's that PA slide that you said was like a big part of this game plan. And Jones finds Hodgins for a 9-yard gain.
Against Diggs, too. Diggs is off. Kind of looks like he's playing a deep third. Hodgins breaks over the middle of the field and has a step. Diggs closes very fast, but this type of play, like I said, this was a huge, huge type of play design out of different formations for the New York Giants. Watch Dallas's defense. They all pursue Saquon Barkley. 33 is out of position. Leighton Vander Esch isn't really fooled. He sees Richie James coming from the backside, so he puts himself into the flat, but then that also removes Leighton Vander Esch because he was so on key of what Richie James was doing, sliding underneath, that removed him a little bit early from that throwing window, and Daniel Jones is able to find Hodgins with somebody bearing down on him. Number 90, DeMarcus Lawrence, scary guy.
Yeah. 2nd and 1 situation. This is one situation here. You have a middle of the field look, close safety look here, single cover 1. I would have personally preferred the Giants to take a shot here on 2nd and 1. I'm just, again, like I was talking about earlier with the 2nd and 4 and the 2nd and 8. There are opportunities here. Look how many bodies are around the line of scrimmage here. You got to cover 1 look here. Maybe there's an opportunity to get something going vertically. They just want to get the first down, though, so they just run it for 2 yards.
We also have Trevon Diggs on Darius Slayton at the top of the screen and Isaiah Hodgins on the football field. So not Marcus Johnson, but they're both outside the numbers. Then it looks like you're going to have, because the box is pretty loaded, Richie James with off leverage with a two-way go against whatever that slot cornerback is. Giants elect to run the football, and it's played pretty well. It only goes for 2 yards to get the first down, which I guess is the important thing. But still, you want to create some explosive plays. It looks like 79 loses badly to DeMarcus Lawrence, who makes contact on Saquon Barkley to trip him up as Nick Gates is going to kick out number 33. And then just Dallas just absolutely collapses on Saquon Barkley.
Maybe it's partially the injury, Nick, but I feel like Tyree Phillips has kind of had a downward trajectory. His first start with the Giants was his best almost, and then it's kind of just been like a slow, steady decline. Maybe, again, partially because of the injury, but not a great play from him there. But it sets up this 1st and 10, and I want to point this play out because I think this is a good example for me of what I was talking about on the 4th down play by the Giants, the 4th and 1 miss by Daniel Jones. Watch how on this play, with the defender in his passing lane, he's able to change the trajectory of his throw by changing the arm slot that he throws from here, and to get the ball over the top of the defender, loft it a little bit into space, and allow for a hands catch from the receiver. That's what I wanted on that 4th and 1 miss to Saquon Barkley, him to change the trajectory, change his arm slot, and throw the ball ahead of Barkley so he can make a hands catch ahead of him instead of driving the ball like Jones did behind Barkley, where he had to flip his whole body and try to make a catch near his body low. So I just know this is just an example to me, Nick, especially when you see from the end zone, of like he has the ability to change his arm slot and change the trajectory of the throw. So it's not like Jones can't do it. And here's an example of how he did do it to get it over a defender in the pass lane.
Yeah, we'll see it on the end zone copy. But before we do that, another play action slide, right? I think this is a very good play by Daniel Jones. I like how Mike Kafka allowed Darius Slayton to get involved with this because he's your hot hand, get the football into his hands. But look at Dallas's defense, Dan. Look at them. They all just bite on Saquon Barkley. Even the guys on the backside are biting so far down that you have so much leverage for Darius Slayton to catch this football. Micah Parsons makes a great individual effort to get into the face of Daniel Jones, and the pump fake by Daniel Jones kind of throws Parsons off, which allows Daniel Jones to change his arm trajectory and put the football out in front, kind of lofting it over Micah Parsons like that. If he did that on the 4th and 1, which we're going to see in a little bit, it would have been excellent. But this is difficult for Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is flowing against the way he wants to throw the football, rolling to his left. So he has to flip his entire body with Parsons bearing down, pump fake, get Parsons to jump like he did there, and then just loft it over the top of him. Very good play by Jones to pick up 5 yards to Darius Slayton. I wish it could have went for more here, but I do appreciate this play call.
And look at the throw there. Look at the arm slot that he throws this from. He's traditionally an over-the-top thrower here. This is almost like a 3/4 throw from him right here, which you don't see a lot there. And that's why he's able to change the trajectory of the football and get it over the top. When you see the 4th and 1 play, it's actually a much easier throw on the 4th and 1 because he's not rolling to his left. He doesn't have to flip his hips around, and he's able to kind of throw from a balanced base on that one. But at the same time, he throws it over the top and drives the football. And that's the difference here to me. So whenever anyone talks about that play to me, this is just kind of what I want to see. And there's a play later in the game where Dallas Cowboys, and you pointed this out on your Twitter, Nick, was a great observation. We won't see it today. We'll see it tomorrow or whenever we do the defensive film, where they run the exact same play, basically, the Dallas Cowboys, as the Giants ran on the 4th and 1. And similarly, Dak is in a spot with somebody in his passing lane, and he changes trajectory on his football, and he, changes his arm slot and is able to get the ball over the top.
Yeah, Jalen Smith makes a great play on that one as well. This sets up a 2nd and 5 where Andrew Thomas surrenders his first sack of the season. I think this was the one that was credited against him. Might have been the other one. But Micah Parsons, just the energy of Micah. Actually, no, I don't think this one was credited against Micah or against Andrew Thomas, because I only saw him get credited for 1 sack. But Micah Parsons just runs the entire loop around Daniel Jones, and there's pressure coming from the backside because Chris Myrick is blocking DeMarcus Lawrence by himself. I mean, terrible situation to be in, and Myrick actually does a solid job recovering to get Lawrence out of the way. But then you have a bunch of guys up near the line of scrimmage, and Micah Parsons gets Jones, but then 33 finishes him off for a loss of only 1 yard here. But you could just see Micah Parsons' game-changing ability. Because Andrew Thomas, at this point, we've seen this how many times this season. Andrew Thomas gets his hand on you. He just rides you up the arc and you're done. Micah Parsons uses the rip move to kind of create a little bit of distance and also just kind of outruns Andrew Thomas up the arc to get all the way around him and crash back into the pocket. Just a very, very good individual effort by 11.
Yep, well broken down by you there. And if you look at it from the other angle, you'll see there was just nowhere to go with the ball. Dallas was ready for this play call.
No, yeah, nowhere to go with the football. These three level, it's not even really three level read, but you have Saquon Barkley in the flat, an intermediate crossing route, and Darius Slayton occupying a clear out with the deep safety. I'm guessing the primary read here is that backside intermediate route by Hodgins against Trevon Diggs, but it's tough. And
Right.
Dallas's pass rush is just all over the Giants. And Dallas, they were slanting and they were doing things similar to what the Lions were doing. It's something the Giants have struggled with. It's not necessarily novel. It's been around football for quite a while, but you can see how they slant. And then Daniel Jones tries to do the rollout, and you have Chris Myrick in a one-on-one block against DeMarcus Lawrence to the rollout side. Like, that's not the best situation to be in.
And look, at least until this point, a lot of people complaining about Mike Kafka's play calling. And to this point, he's thrown a lot. That's a 2nd and 5 he throws. He threw a lot to open the game. He threw a lot on the next drive. There are a lot of pass calls at this point. Part of why he maybe feels like he can't pass are because plays like that, where he runs a play, no one's open, and the pressure is immediate. I mean, it just makes it more difficult to coordinate a game and have a pass-heavy game plan when those are the factors that are, in play here. But here you see the 3rd and 6 screen call to Barkley. This time, I thought at least the Cowboys. I mean, the Giants ran it earlier on 3rd and 8. It should have worked for a big gain. The blocking was horrible. This time, they were completely ready for it, the Cowboys.
Yeah, I didn't love the play action element of that
True.
2nd and 5 call that we just went over, but I mean, I get it. 2nd and 5, it's a reasonable rundown, but I feel like Dallas just absolutely knew exactly what the Giants were doing in that situation. And now on this 3rd and 6, we have a halfback screen to Barkley, and I feel like Barkley does a good job giving Daniel Jones a throwing lane. He runs away from his blockers, but Daniel Jones is in trouble because Jack Anderson loses up front. 97's right in the face of Daniel Jones. Tyree Phillips loses to 92, Dorrance Armstrong, who's kind of coming around on Daniel Jones. And I get it. A lot of these linemen are climbing, but they're in the throwing lane. So Saquon Barkley runs into the middle of the field. And I thought this was going to be a first down, but Leighton Vander Esch just does such a good job closing on Barkley and tackling him right at the down marker. And that sets up the 4th and 1 play that we all have seen, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's crazy how it came at this stage of the game because it's like if it's their first drive of the half. It felt like the game-altering, game-deciding play, and it was still just their first drive of the half. That's how much time was just drained off the clock by the Cowboys. But we'll roll it through here. It's a great play call by Mike Kafka here. Basically the perfect call against this coverage. Saquon Barkley gets open. He has a ton of space ahead of him, but like we said, Jones drove the football instead of kind of changing the trajectory on the ball. I know some people who are just like, there's some crazy people, man. Some people say the ball was deflected. As you can obviously see from this angle, the ball was never touched or even came close to being touched by a Dallas defender. It's not even close. So whoever is saying that on Twitter right now, I've seen a lot of people saying that. It's almost like propaganda at this point. If you're saying things like that, it's really scary to me. In the era of fake news and things like that, it's really scary. But obviously, as you can see, luckily we have the film to kind of prove hopefully people can see this. The ball just doesn't even come close to getting tipped. So the trajectory of the football is the same. It's a drive throw by Jones. I mean, I get it. There's somebody in his passing lane, which alters. If there was no one on the field, he wouldn't miss this throw to Barkley. Like if it was just playing 11 on 11 or 7 on 7 or, just like flag football or not flag football. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, Nick, but
instead of 10 on 11.
Yeah, exactly. 10 on 11 because they had 10 men on the field. But really what you want to see from Jones here is change your trajectory, change your arm slot like you did earlier in the game, and put this throw well out ahead of the running back so he can make the hands catch way out in front of him and then turn upfield.
Yes, exactly. This is not the best pass by Daniel Jones. It's not like somebody was in the passing lane, really. I mean, 90 is a little bit late to get his hand up. You could see it, the lane is open at that point. People are saying maybe 90 would have knocked it down if he threw directly over the top of him. I think he might have been a little bit late. There seems to be some space there. It's a little bit hard to judge, and I feel like on the end zone angle, maybe we got a little bit of a better angle. Either way, this throw is behind Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's not the best receiving back by any means, and having him to adjust to a back hip throw is very difficult. I still contend that he should have caught the football, but Daniel Jones needs to also put a better ball out there for him to catch. One of the biggest issues with this play, though, isn't just the throw. It's not the drop. It's you have 10 freaking guys on the football field. Like, how the hell, Dan, does that happen? Like on a 4th and 1, a huge situation. That is something that we would have murdered Jason Garrett for. And we kind of brush over it with this coaching staff because this coaching staff has done such a good job and they haven't had many mistakes, but that kind of stuff's inexcusable. Love the play design, but the 10 guys on the football field is an inexcusable mistake.
Yeah, I agree, but I also feel like at the same time, it's hard for me to just crush them because despite only having 10 on the field, it's such a perfect play call against this call by the defensive call by the Cowboys that there's a guy literally wide open if you just lead him. And that's at least how I see it. And now he still should have made the catch. It hit him in his hands, even though he has to completely flip his body around and then catch it low because it's a drive throw low. I'll still give you that. He should catch the ball. I get he should. It hits him 2 in the hands. Fine, catch the football. It's you're a professional athlete, but man, even with the 90 in the pass lane thing that people are talking about, none of that matters if you change your arm slot and change your trajectory and throw an over the top throw instead of a drive throw. That's the
Instead of a
difference
drive
here.
throw.
What'd you say?
Instead of the drive throw, yeah.
Yeah, instead of the drive throw, right? Like that's the whole. To me, that's the play. I know there's other factors here, but change your trajectory. There's no reason to drive this throw. He has so much space. You don't. It's not a tight window throw. There's a lot of space. So kind of just loft out ahead of him and let him make a hands catch in front of him. But it
You
is
made
what
it
it
more
is. And
difficult on your running back than you needed to.
yeah, right. Like he instead needs to look at this angle. He needs to flip his hips around and make the catch low.
And why is this such a good play call? People are asking. Look, you have those two reduced wide receivers just running in breaking routes, slants, creating traffic. Dallas is in man coverage at this point, 4th and 1. Saquon Barkley comes from the left side of the field to the right, meaning both of those linebackers probably have responsibility on Saquon Barkley and man coverage. And since he's going right, Leighton Vander Esch is going to assume that responsibility. Watch how Darius Slayton steps right in front of Leighton Vander Esch just to get in the way. He doesn't even make contact, but has to alter his path. And look how much leverage Saquon Barkley has. And then Leighton Vander Esch has to fight through another block or another wide receiver. And it's all perfectly legal. It's just legal traffic against man coverage. Perfect play call other than the 10 guys. Just got to have a better throw and have to hold on to the football.
Yep, both things have to happen. Barkley has to catch it. They're not mutually exclusive. He has to catch it, and the throw has to be better. So it is what it is, but it leaves a big play on the field. Sets up the 8th drive of the game. This is a 5-play, 27-yard drive with a punt on a 4th and 9 after after a few plays here. The game was still in hand here. This was not a garbage drive. They're only down 21-13. It gets out of hand after this drive. That's when the garbage stuff starts to come into play. It starts off here with a really spark plug drive from Gary Brightwell. Here he runs a little gap. I think it's a gap run? Or no?
It's a 15-yard run where you have the entire Giants left side of the line blocked down on that nose and that 4-eye, and then you bring Chris Myrick out to kick out the end man on the line of scrimmage. So almost kind of like split.
In the orbit motion from Barkley.
Yeah, and the orbit motion from Barkley, who is aligned in the bunch with Darius Slayton and Myrick, who's would be, I guess, the number 1 receiver to that side. He motions post-snap. So it's just movement, post-snap movement around. But look how the Dallas linebackers are nowhere near Gary Brightwell. Number 6, watch number 6, Donovan Wilson, the safety. Watch what he does. He doesn't even pay attention to Gary Brightwell. He sees that Saquon Barkley is motioning, and he's going to help contain the guy who's going to get kicked out. So he's watching Myrick, sees Barkley's motion, says, I got to contain because my homeboy is going to get kicked out right there, 33. But then he just removes himself from the gap where Gary Brightwell has the football. Leighton Vander Esch kind of gets picked by some of the best blocking we've seen all game from Jack Anderson, Nick Gates, and Andrew Thomas, who just wash down this defensive line. This is the biggest hole you'll ever see. I also think Brightwell does a good job, just one cut running back, who I feel like Brightwell is really starting to prove himself as a solid spell one cut type of running back, because he has some explosiveness and he can really put his foot in the ground and get vertical.
Yeah, he can, and he does it on back-to-back plays, and that's a great breakdown. You're the best blocking we've seen all game from the Giants on that split zone play. And then it starts this play again. They're using Barkley as eye candy. That's back-to-back plays where you got the defense moving in the direction of Saquon Barkley here. And instead, you just hand it off on like a little jet sweep type of reverse action to Gary Brightwell. And look at what you just said show up right on film, Nick. Look at that cut. Gets vertical immediately there. No wasted space. Great cutback by Gary Brightwell.
Great play design, too, from the New York Giants to fool the Dallas Cowboys second-level defenders who have been solid this game. Watch how they're paying attention to Chris Myrick. They've been kind of, I wouldn't say they're as on as the Seattle second level was in terms of reading the H-back, because remember, Seattle was just dialed into everything the New York Giants wanted to do from a run game standpoint. But they see the H-back shift. Daniel Jones opens up to the pitch, and they all react to Saquon Barkley. Wingback, Gary Brightwell. Whenever the Giants have 21 personnel and one of them is a wing back, you got to assume something tricky might happen, and that's exactly what happens here. They pull the backside guard and the backside tackle, and they basically just run a wing back GT pulling type of play. You can call it a wing back GT counter to Gary Brightwell, who does a good job cutting up right there. That's a good block by Darius Slayton, a good block by Jack Anderson, who is one of the pullers. And then Andrew Thomas climbs to locate Leighton Vander Esch. The Giants just ripped off a 15-yard run by Gary Brightwell and then an 11-yard run by Gary Brightwell. Good way to get the football down the football field and pick up some freaking yardage when you've kind of been stagnant in the last couple drives.
Yep, exactly. And then here's a play where I kind of wish they would have gotten a little more aggressive here and just went ahead and thrown the ball here or tried to come up with a throw here, but they go right back to Brightwell here on a zone read play, and it goes for no gain.
Yeah, and this is one where Donovan Wilson, I think, is the reason why Daniel Jones hands his football off. He has the read defender. DeMarcus Lawrence pinches, but Donovan Wilson is right behind him. So you basically have two contained defenders who are reading Daniel Jones and reading Gary Brightwell. So Jones just hands the football off, and Glowinski, lo and behold, shocking, loses his block pretty badly. But it also seems like, to stick up for Glowinski for a second, Tyree Phillips pushes the two technique right into the gap. Tyree just pushes him right into the gap, and it's like, oh man, why'd you do that? But it's an unfortunate situation, which there were plenty on offense for the Giants.
Flip to the sideline view here real quick, Nick. I want to ask you something real quick as we watch down this play. So look at the inside of this play where, is that Tanner Hudson, the tight end?
Chris Myrick is the tight end.
Chris Myrick is the tight end on that side of the line of scrimmage. Like, how about on these plays when you're running zone read and you know the defense has been like, actually, you know what? Never mind. It's not going to work. I take it back. This play is dead from this play just feels dead from the start.
It's Six's presence that I'm worried about. I think if Six wasn't there, say if Six was, if the Cowboys weren't a too high, then Daniel Jones keeps this. He beats 90 to the edge, and now you have Chris Myrick blocking, and it's like a 20-yard game by Daniel Jones. But Six doing the same, mirroring DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, I just don't think Daniel Jones is going to be able to get.
I agree with that. What I was more wondering, which is why I said to flip it to this view, and now I just see it's not possible, is like, are there other solutions on plays like this where they have like these two guys accounting for Jones, so many guys in the box to stop the run if you just hand it instead of the key, like for just like a quick slant or some kind of quick in-breaking route, but it just feels like, looking at it again, there's no real area to throw an in-breaker either. So it's just I just don't know the solution.
The third option on this play is Saquon Barkley, who is the number 3 receiver pre-snap, 3-by-1 nub with Myrick to the boundary side. Barkley motions to split back look, almost goes behind Daniel Jones almost like a pistol, and then fast threes himself. But Leighton Vander Esch is so dialed into it. And I actually want to see if Jones checks Leighton Vander Esch, because he doesn't even look the throw side. But that's the third element of this, is you can keep it, you can hand it off, or you could throw the football to Saquon Barkley. There are a lot of RPO tags on these zone reads. It seems like recently Jones hasn't been throwing the football too much on him, but maybe a little bit in the beginning of the game, but not too much. A lot of them has just been hand the football off because he's backside defenders. Yeah, I don't even think he sees Leighton Vander. Maybe right here he notices Leighton Vander Esch expand, and didn't seem like there was that much leverage, so he's just going to either hand the football off or keep it, and Dallas just plays it really well.
Yeah, and we're just not getting much from these zone reads anymore, so I'm just trying to figure out different ways they can create offense off them with the RPO tags and by throwing the football off those looks. And we'll see what happens here. They try to run a little jet sweep action with Matt Breida on 2nd and 10 here, but, Dallas reads this so well.
Yeah, they were already fooled on a wingback handoff before. They're not going to be fooled again. Parsons doesn't necessarily get to him, but Donovan Wilson, you could see right at the snap, Donovan Wilson is expanding to his right, away from the play action fake. Like, he knew that Matt Breida was going to get the football.
Yeah, and you'll see here, a good play made by Donovan Wilson. I got to say, Donovan Wilson had some good film in this one. That was a 6th-round pick find by the Cowboys in 2019 out of Texas A&M. Really good find for them, number 6.
Yeah, he was all over the field. It's going to set up a 3rd and 9 where the Giants just go incomplete. And this incompletion was one of those times where we're like, oh, geez, man, I don't know if the Giants are going to be able to do anything in this game.
Yeah, this was a tough look for the Giants. There's just nothing open. Daniel Jones forced to scramble and then just try to throw something in the flat to Barkley. But, this was a good play call by the Cowboys. The middle of the field, I just don't know where they can go with the football here.
Quarters look pre-snap, and watch Donovan Wilson. We were just singing his praises and talking about him. Watch how post-snap he drops to like a deep 4th, like he's going to be maybe even like a cloud type of situation, but why would you cloud over the top of Kenny Galladay? But you see Saquon Barkley leak out and he just drops to the middle of the field and then he just latches on to Daniel Jones, almost like he's just free ranging it. Like he has responsibility with Saquon Barkley, and then he just pivots right off and chases Daniel Jones. That's a really good individual play. But this is something that Dan Quinn does with his safeties sometimes. That's why he loves to have these versatile safeties, 3 safety type of looks. And Javon Curse and Donovan Wilson are both fit that bill. But this is the second or third time in this game where Donovan Wilson just was in a quarters look and he just flew down like that towards the line of scrimmage after acting like he was going to drop back and just kind of totally help blow up a play.
Yeah, he had such a good game. And I just think, this drive started with 2 explosive runs by Gary Brightwell, right? And how many drives have we seen this season bogged down at the 50 or just shortly into the opponent's territory, like their mid 40s, and ends up in a punt? Sometimes these punts have gone for like 20-yard net. Like there's been 3 in the past 2 weeks that have had like a 20 to 30, between 20 and 30-yard net, which is horrific for a punt. And just so many of these drives bogging down at midfield.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's definitely
it's still a 21-13 game at this point. Like there's a 1-score game.
Yeah, and Jamie Gillen too. He had some punts that were booming in this game. He had the one that almost hit the scoreboard. Yeah, he had 2 that almost did. Yeah, but there are times, man, where he doesn't have because the Giants are an offense that they'll move the football and get to like midfield. And in recent weeks, they've just absolutely bogged down in midfield. And it was like, oh, do we kick a 63-yard field goal or do we punt the football on a 3rd and 8 and a 3rd and 9?
Yeah,
they elect to punt. Yeah, exactly. And they elect to punt the football, and then they don't really have a punter that has the type of precision that you need in those situations. But if you're a really crappy offense like the Giants were last year and they don't move the football at all, he can completely flip a field for you.
Yeah, he can, and he's got a good leg. And there were 2 punts that were like hit the inside the 5, but the Giants didn't have the coverage because the punts didn't really have much hang time on them, or maybe they had hang time. I don't know what it was, but maybe it's the coverage isn't good. But like, whatever happened to the directional kicking inside that went from that? Like, I never see him do any kind of those like sideline to try to get it out of bounds. It's always up the middle. I don't know what that's probably taught by the coaching, I guess, but as the hope is that you got guys to like run it down and tag it inside the 5, but Giants haven't been able to do that. So they punt. It's 21-13. Dallas scores right away to go 28-13. So now we're in desperation mode here. This is an 11-play, 38 drive that ends the turnover on downs. The Giants are actually forced on this one to go for a 4th and 9. Obviously, when you're down 28-13 versus 21-13, it's a different scenario. You're running out of time. You don't have many options here. This was a weird drive altogether, Nick, because Giants took so much time here. There was over 8 minutes to start the drive. And by the time it bogs down here, Nick, there's only like 3 minutes left. So it's like, even if they were able to convert that 4th and 9 and keep the drive going, they still need 2 touchdowns. It's a 2-score game, but they need 2 touchdowns and a conversion. So like, I just don't love the sense of urgency here. Yeah, maybe you don't trust your offense to run a traditional, 2-minute drill, throw the ball every play, that type of thing. But there's no real option to win otherwise. Like they have some runs on this play that take off clock, but some of them there's a 9-yard run for Matt Breida, but it runs a lot of clock. And if the goal is just to get the ball moving, I get that, but you have 8 minutes to start this drive, right, Nick? Even if you score, even if you convert that 4th and 9, by the time they get down and score a touchdown, there might be in like onside kick range. You cannot manage a game like that. If you have 8 minutes and change to start a drive down 2 scores, you need to get it. So by the time you score a touchdown, there's 4 minutes or 4.5, somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 minutes left. So you can kick the ball on a kickoff down the field, get a stop, use your timeouts, or give up 1 first down, use your timeouts, and get the ball back. And that's the problem I have with this drive. Even if it did work, they would have had no time left. And it started with over 8 minutes.
It did start with over 8 minutes, and the Giants on this first play, I feel like Daniel Jones didn't love what he saw against Anthony Brown, who played this quick hitch. I would say quickly, but you could still bang it on this specific play. And Jones tries to work to the other routes to see. It's just basically curls across the board. Jason Garrett special. Jones elects to run the football, and then he ends up finding Isaiah Hodgins against Trevon Diggs for a short gain along the sideline. But you're right, man. The tempo on this drive, I was sitting there and Greg Olsen was talking about it, and it was just very obvious. It's like, dude, you guys need to pick up the pace if you want to get yourselves back in this football game.
Yeah, and I guess they just don't trust their ability to do it. So you'll see right away after that, they have a 2nd and 10 run or a 2nd and 5 run here for the Giants. I mean, they were slow to get to this play call, and then they called it, and it's a run, and it works. Like, great. You're down 2 scores, though. Like, what are you gaining from this?
This is their best run, too. It's 10 yards, a G lead where the play side guard and Nick Gates kick out into space. Both the play side guard, Mark Lewinsky, and Nick Gates do a good job kicking out. Saquon Barkley cuts inside of them and then runs right into Donovan Wilson, who kind of lifts Barkley up off the ground and gets assistance in bringing him down.
And I'll say this on this play: go back to the sideline angle of that run. For starters, here you see the hole develop here. I feel like in the past, Nick, Barkley, instead of trying to make that cutback where he slows down, tries to win the edge here and just use his insane athleticism. In his first game ever against the Jags, he had a similar run where he could beat the edge with Wilson. It's not an easy angle. It's for special athletes only. But, I think back to like that USC game against Penn State in the Rose Bowl where he had an even sicker angle that he eliminated, and that Jags game, his first home game of his rookie season. I don't know, man. I wondered, like, is this, when you talked about earlier, you mentioned at the top of the podcast, he doesn't look the same. Like, I'm just surprised he didn't try to like get to the edge there.
After he cut back inside?
No, right here. Yeah, right there. Right after the cutback.
Sprint to the edge. Yeah, I guess I can
to
see what
the
you're
edge.
saying. He kind of like slows up at the numbers and like wants to juke back inside and then just lowers his shoulder and gets contacted. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
And it's not going to be an easy run, and it's not an easy angle, but he is a special athlete. But regardless, they pick up 10. The clock's churning. They're running the ball. Like, they get into a first and 10 situation here, and then they try another run. It's just, it's a little odd to me. Like, if you're going to run, maybe do it out of the gun, spread. I don't know, but time is ticking. You're down 2 touchdowns here. And this whole series of plays right here, from the 5-yard throw to the 2nd and 5, 10-yard run to this -2-yard run, that churns off like 2.5 minutes of clock.
And look at the personnel they have. They have a big off. This is not a 2-minute drill, but you need to put points on the board. And the Giants are rolling out a personnel group with 2 tight ends and a big offensive lineman all to one side. And Mark Lewinsky on the backside of the play just loses to a 4-eye technique who slants inside, and the slanting defensive lineman in the New York Giants offensive line, typically a recipe for success for the defense. Mark Lewinsky barely makes contact with 99. And once Saquon Barkley gets the football, he has 99 and 97 right in his face. The play had no shot whatsoever. But it's not like the Giants have the ability to go out in 10 personnel. They don't even want to be in 11 personnel that much because they don't really trust their wide receiver core. They're rolling out the 6 offensive linemen and 12 personnel. At this point of the game, down by multiple scores, it's not a great situation, bud.
So it sets up a 2nd and 12 here. Giants take the check down here. Again, they move the ball. It gets to a 3rd and 3 situation, which is good, I guess, but it's a check down, and so clock is churning. So ultimately, this is probably the right decision anyway. There's just nothing open. Like, there's a potential hole shot at the bottom of your screen that he could potentially throw here, but the pressure's there quick, and I don't know if they even want him throwing that like to the field side, the hole shot there. So he just takes the check down for 9.
Yeah, I'm fine with the check down as well. Dallas transitions into cover 2 after.
It's the right decision. It just, unfortunately, it's churning a lot of clock.
Yes. And Nick Gates does a really good job here, just holding up his assignment. And it's at this point where we're just like, man, we got to find some kind of positivity. But he's going up against Odigizua, and he gets his hands inside, and he just sits back on his ass.
Yeah, just hold ground there. It is a great point. Look for the positive there. Look for the silver lining. It's a great individual effort and block from Nick Gates there. Sets up a 3rd and 3 here. Dallas again slanting the lineman, and you just get a 3-yard run or I think it was a 4-yard run for the first down here.
And this is when slanting goes wrong. Everybody slants to the right, and the New York Giants just block them all down. And Matt Breida realizes it. When you have an instinctive running back, and Saquon Barkley can do this as well, who knows what the defense is doing. Defense slants, you just put your foot in the ground and just bounce right around it. Now, it doesn't go for too much, but this is a 3rd down call where Dallas attempted to just crash the middle of the field. Good job by Breida adjusting his route, picking up the first down.
Yeah, and slanting goes wrong in this example that they convert, but do the Dallas Cowboys really care about giving up a 4-yard run up to 2 touchdowns here? No, they don't, because the clock is churning. It's taking a ton of time off the clock to even run, set up for your run. And then what did the Giants do after getting that first down? They run again, and it's 4 yards. You can look at that as a success at any other point in the game, but not when you're down 2 scores. You start the drive with 8 minutes, and now you're down to like 4 minutes. At this point, they're down to like 4 minutes by this point because they're running the ball so much. And then, they run this little like play action slide to Brightwell, 6-yard gain, first down, but clock's continuing to churn. We're now nearing the 3-minute mark soon. And so
We see
it's
something
a
different.
conversion, but
Yeah,
what'd you say?
we see something different on this play too with Gary Brightwell, who's the fullback. Giants are in I formation. We don't see too much I formation from the New York Giants, so you know something's coming here. The Giants open up like the gunner on the football. Gary Brightwell steps in the direction of what is the perceived play side, and then he just loops right back around underneath Daniel Jones. And as we said, play action bootleg slide somebody underneath Jones, give an easy flat option for Jones, and it's been kind of the philosophy of the Giants offense this game. Gary Brightwell gets out of bounds. It stops the clock at least.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, does it stop the clock? I think they still run it after first downs at this time of the game.
Oh,
Because
it's
it's
not
not
under 5 minutes yet? Oh.
it might have been actually no, it's under 5 minutes at this point. I think it's under four
Yeah.
minutes when they stop running, but it might have been under 4 minutes or right on the border of that. So maybe they did, but like any other time of the game, I've been praising the play design and it's really interesting. But and I don't totally blame Kafka for this. I think he just feels hamstrung. But at this stage of the game, those types of plays aren't going to win you, aren't going to get you back into this game and give you a chance to win, right?
Look at the leverage of Trevon. Yes, no, you're right. And look at the leverage of Trevon Diggs on this play. He is so far inside of Isaiah Hodgins, and there's just like no respect paid.
None.
None at all. And Jones
And I'm
goes
surprised, by the way,
right.
Nick, when you see this, right? Because we just saw earlier on this drive, there was the whole shot available potentially for Hodgins here. Is this something the coaching staff should adjust to, like on the bottom of the screen? Like, look, like there are some options there. Why don't we try something here?
And Dallas is in cover two, and they're playing cover two a lot in
Right.
this second half, or too high type of variation. You can see one reason why there's quote unquote no respect for Hodgins is just Trevon Diggs, that flat defender, and he's opening up to Richie James, expecting an out route while also keeping his eyes on Saquon Barkley leaking out to the flat. But what does that do? That gives Isaiah Hodgins all the space in the world against that safety. But it's a little bit difficult. Maybe the safety was going to rotate outside the numbers. You still have a shot to Hodgins, but the play was designed to the right side of the field, which was the field side on the double in-breaking route that is played very well by Anthony Brown to knock this play away from Darius Slayton on the dig.
Yeah, I almost feel like the play was designed in the wrong way there. The left side looked like they had a lot more opportunity, especially down this much. Like throw a back shoulder toward the sideline to Hodgins there. Who knows what can happen? At worst, it's incomplete. The clock stays stopped. But then here comes probably I'd say the worst situational play call from Mike Kafka I've seen this season, just because his situational play calling has been so good. I just don't understand why you're going under center. You're running play action at 2nd and 10 with 3 minutes in the game left in the game, down 2 touchdowns. There's no way in the world that 11 is going to play the run here, Micah Parsons. There's just zero chance he's guessing run. No one respects the run here. There's just no point in going under center and running play action with a deep drop. Go into the gun. You don't even have to fake the handoff. If you want to, you can. Who cares? But go into the gun. Micah Parsons plays this pass 100% of the time. He plays this pass, and he doesn't respect the run at all here. He just runs right up the arc and gets to the point of right where Jones is hits his back foot off the deep play action under center drop. Immediate sack.
And you had Cager in the flat, but Andrew Thomas is beat really bad because Micah Parsons isn't going to play the run here. There's no way. I agree. The 2nd and 10 play action call is one that is very suspect in my opinion. It's probably one that Mike Kafka wants back, even though the Giants at this point are pretty done. But you could see Micah Parsons just went up the arc outside of Andrew Thomas. He stutters right in front of Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas goes wide with the hands, tries to get the small of the back, does not contact the elbow, and then Mike Parsons just kind of bends right through, man. Look at that flexibility by Parsons to turn, that kind of control with his feet, how he dips that inside shoulder and gets around Andrew Thomas. He's right into Andrew Thomas here. Look how close Micah Parsons is to Andrew Thomas at this moment, and Andrew Thomas is not contacting him. And then Andrew Thomas goes wide with the hands, and he just keeps everything tight, and just goes right into the pocket to sack Daniel Jones.
Yep. Just not the best call there. It takes him to a 3rd and 25 situation. I think this is a good design here and a good play by the Giants to pick up 16 of the yards and give them a 4th and manageable here.
Yeah, I also like seeing Andrew Thomas just take Micah Parsons, wash him inside, and just stay in front of him after giving up the sack. He's just like, nah, son. That does not happen often. I am not used to it this season. I am going to wash you inside. And Richie James just, I mean, look at what Dallas is doing defensively, though. Their linebackers are, 10 yards off the ball, and they just drop. You have this, cover 2 type of look. Look at the whole shot that could have went to Marcus Johnson, but you have the safety just cheating over to that side. Good play by Jones to just take Richie James in the Tampa 2 type of look. 2 defenders there, so that had to be a high-velocity throw by Jones through a relatively tight window. not NFL type, but
What do you think about what would be your like I guess as to why we never see, because you just mentioned at the Marcus Johnson bottom of the screen, like why do we never see any hole shots against cover two from this offense?
I think here you probably don't want to because it's a trap because you have Trevon Diggs just sink to the flat and then he's looking for the number 2 to run the out or the flat, which happens from the middle of the field with Saquon Barkley or whoever that is. Might be Matt Breida actually. But look at six. Six is covering that. Six is darting over there. So you need to throw the football like now. I would not want Daniel Jones to take that throw. It's
I don't want
partly
him to
because,
take this throw either. That's not why I'm saying that. And I think if
yeah,
you're going to take this throw, it has to be back shoulder and toward the sideline and it has to have a lot of velocity on it. But I just think in general, we don't take any hole shots against cover two type looks. There are
no,
obviously some better situations. What do you think
I
the
think
reason
I think
that
a
would be?
big reason why is because the Giants run so many inside breaking routes, and they run so
Okay.
many routes that are predicated on the wide receiver knowing where to sit when they are going up against cover two. And I feel like the Giants do a pretty good job against cover two, attacking the middle of the field where there are a bunch of middle hook defenders traditionally, right? Like going back to what game was that? The Seattle game where they didn't really do much offensively through the air. Some of their biggest plays to Darius Slayton were against cover two, where Darius Slayton just did a really good job sinking and finding that void between the two middle hook defenders. That's one part of the offense that I feel like has done a solid job. But yeah, sometimes I would like them to take the whole shot. It's a tight window. You need to have a lot of rapport with your wide receiver and your quarterback, which the Giants have a
Right.
lot of newer guys in there. That could be a reason, but they are moving the football against these cover two looks. It would be nice if they did take a little bit more. I would also like to see maybe some flag routes designed against the cover two,
Yeah, that's
like
a great
reduce,
point.
yeah. Put that flat defender in conflict, make them sink, get the outside leverage against the safety, but we haven't really seen that much either.
Yep. This is something I've been thinking about because they face a lot of those looks and they just never seem to have answers for it. Here is the fourth down play, effectively the end of the game here. So I have a question on this one. Do you think that it's possible that if Jones throws this one with anticipation to exactly where he ends up going with the football and he puts it toward, so he had to throw right like earlier, yeah, basically before the receiver gets out of the break, that's thrown with anticipation, and outside the numbers, so outside the 20-yard line, closer toward the sideline, there's a better chance at this.
Yeah, definitely. There's a better chance. I don't know if it gets home because that covering defender is pretty on top of it. I think that's Anthony Brown, but that would be the ideal situation. Daniel Jones kind of rolls to his right. He doesn't have incredible pressure in front of him. It's actually picked up well until that secondary rusher comes, but then it all breaks down. I'm wondering if he's waiting for Myrick to get into his route or if he's waiting for James to turn and pivot back outside. Either way, yeah, it would have been ideal, I guess, if he found who is at Hodgins up at the top of the screen right out of his
Yep.
break, but he's about a split second too late, and then he ends up getting hit. And
Yeah.
Giants turn the football over on downs.
Yeah, that throw ends up being late and there's just nowhere to go with it. And so that's a turnover on downs, effectively ending the game. We'll run through the last drive. It's a 7-play, 64 touchdown drive. We're just going to run it through without any analysis on it. It's a garbage time drive, so I just don't feel. And I know Nick shares this opinion. It's defenses are playing you different on these garbage time drives, so it's not exactly what I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say.
No, I know what you're saying, but yeah, we'll get right into our superlatives segment, which is sponsored by WinBet. Sign up for WinBet today to receive a special sports offer. Bet 100, win 100. Download the WinBet app now or visit winbet.com. That is WYNN bet.com to start winning.
Okay, Nick, let's start our superlatives section this week with our superlatives. Then let's wrap this up with a talk on how we want to project the offensive line going forward, because I did, bring that up earlier, and I said we would discuss that. So first, we'll do the superlatives. Who would you say was the unheralded player on film on offense?
Unheralded player, I think I'm going to go with Gary Brightwell. Now, I think there's an obvious one, but I'm going to reserve that one for a little bit later. So I'm going to go Gary Brightwell, who did not play too many snaps, but when his number was called, I feel like he was decisive and he showed that one cut type of agility and ability to hit a hole, lower his shoulder, pick up good hard earned yardage. So I'm going to go with Brightwell.
I will go with Nick Gates for this one as the unheralded player, but I guess he's kind of being heralded. Maybe that one doesn't count. Does that not count?
That's why I didn't go with him.
It's tough to say. So let's take him out of it. Maybe he's too heralded. There's been a lot of discussion on how well he played in this game. Otherwise than that, if you're taking out Nick Gates, you can't really find anyone else to give this to other than Gary Brightwell. So I'll give it with Gary Brightwell too. All right, let's move forward and transition to best throw you saw on film.
Best throw from Daniel Jones. I'm probably going to go with the completed pass, maybe to Darius Slayton, just giving him that shot one-on-one. It was a little inside, but Slayton made the adjustment and made the catch. I think the throw you're watching right now might realistically be the best throw, even though it comes in garbage time. But Daniel Jones is on the far hash and he delivers a strike to Richie James right on the sideline. That probably is the best throw, but in a high leverage situation, I appreciate the one-on-one shot and it was actually completed. So I'm going to go there.
Okay, best throw of the game for me would be the same throw. I can't really think of too many others. You might maybe this Richie James throw that you're putting up there, I guess, could be in the mix. But the Slayton throw, it's high, it's a little inside, like you said, but he's able to high point it, and you give your receiver a chance to make a big time 50-50 catch. And I just like the aggressiveness to throw downfield there as well. So how about the best route run by the Giants today?
Best route run by the New York Giants. I mean, am I going to go with this vertical concept of just attacking the Giants or attacking Dallas down the field with Darius Slayton? There's really not one that comes to my mind.
I would agree. There wasn't like a special route in this game. There have been in every other game. I guess I would go with that vertical route too, just because he creates the vertical separation needed, has a little bit of a step on him there.
And you can see how Dallas had to adjust. Even the first one, too. I'm going to go with that first one that wasn't completed because Dallas had to adjust the leverage that they were playing against Darius Slayton. It was an automatic, okay, we got to respect that dude's speed. Like Anthony Brown was like, all right, I'm going to bail from press alignment into off alignment, and I'm just going to align an off alignment now quite often against this guy because he has vertical separation ability. So I'm going to go with that first one that actually wasn't completed.
Okay, let's go with your favorite play call from Mike Kafka.
It's the 4th and 1 call. That was a really good play design at that point of the game. The play was there, the throw wasn't there, the catch wasn't there, but the design worked out against man coverage to pick those linebackers from getting Saquon Barkley, who was crossing face, into the flat wide open.
Yeah, it's either that one or the 3rd and 8 early in the game where they called the screen and Jack Anderson just got destroyed by Van Der Esch. Glinski couldn't locate the second level defender. If either of those two things happen, it's a pretty big play. If both of those things happen and both those linemen execute their assignments, it's a huge play. So great play call there on a 3rd and 8 against the blitz. So I would go with that one. If not the 4th and 1, which is probably the best, especially because of the situational importance. How about the best player overall on film from you?
I think I'm going to go with Nick Gates, man. Like, I mean, I think Andrew Thomas might realistically be, but all things considered, what Nick Gates has overcome, and Nick Gates really had a good game here. It's not just us saying that because of his story. Like, I feel like he played really well in this game. Andrew Thomas did kind of give up 2 sacks, even though I felt like he was good despite that. I'm going to go with Nick Gates, though, bro. And I'm glad that we're finally ushering in a 4th player who's earning this award.
Yeah, this was a tough one for me. I think I'm going to go with Gates as well, though, because it's not just the quote-unquote sacks Thomas gave up that weren't really his best plays. I felt like in the run game, this wasn't Thomas's best game either. There were just a few plays that could have been a little bigger if he made it. And it wasn't anything egregious or anything like that, but enough to the point where I can give it to Gates, who I thought had like a few really good splash plays on film and a few really, like you broke down that pass protection rep he had, and overall didn't really make many mistakes on film. So for me, it was actually between Gates and Slayton. They didn't use Slayton the second half, which to me is not really his fault in any way, shape, or form. But Slayton changed the way the Cowboys had to play the Giants. They changed the way the Cowboys had to line up against him specifically. He altered what the Cowboys wanted to do, and he created plays downfield. And so it's close for me between Slayton and Gates, but I'm going to give it to Gates.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's well earned.
Yeah. How about a pass blocking grade 1 through 10?
Yeah, let's go with a 2.2. Okay, it wasn't great. I felt like Micah Parsons only having 2 sacks is that a win? Like, I don't think so. But Daniel Jones was only sacked 3 times. He was harassed the entire game, which speaks to Daniel Jones' ability to at least get rid of the football. I think it was bad. It was not good. So 2.2.
Yeah, they're starting to regress a bit in their pass pro, especially the right side of the line. Glowinski and Phillips were terrible in this game. That was where I thought the core of their issues were. Like, I thought it would be Jack Anderson going into the game, but Jack Anderson was better in pass pro than Glowinski was, I think. And he was probably better than Phillips. Phillips wasn't great either. So I'll give it like a 3.1. There were a couple plays where they had a pocket, but not much. There weren't really that many pass attempts, though, or plays in the second half in general for the Giants offense. So until the
Yeah,
garbage time TD drive. So how about the run blocking grade 1 through 10?
2.6. Like it was bad too. Like the run blocking, they can't form double teams, man. Their double teams are all getting split. Their double team and climb ability at this moment is horrendous.
Terrible.
And you could point to the lack of continuity, and I think that's definitely a good excuse. Or I don't even want to say excuse because there's negative connotations with that. That's a good reason as to why, but it seems like it even goes beyond that. Like we saw with the Lions, and even what Houston was doing with the slanting. We saw Dallas do some of the slanting as well, and that's just kind of really challenging the offensive line's ability to block in a cohesive way. And that's the identity of the Giants offense right now, is you need to establish the run. The Giants aren't establishing the run right now because up front, they are not on the same page, and they have a lot of guys being cycled in that probably shouldn't be playing, or at least starting football games for an NFL team.
Yeah, you nailed it. I'm going way lower here. I'm going 0.8. I thought this was the worst run blocking I've seen all season from the Giants for a lot of the reasons you said. I mean, there were opportunities to create holes, especially with these double teams, and they just were executing them at such a horrible level. Like, to me, the pass blocking was a slightly better than the run blocking just because of how bad the run blocking was in this game. And it's really unfortunate because this was the one way to beat the Cowboys, by running the football, in my mind at least. And they had a good second way, right? Like the PA slide and all the design passes they had. That would have been enough if they could have also just had a run game with them. And that was the key. They needed the run game with that. Because
I changed mine. I'm gonna go with the 1-6 because you're right.
it really impacted their whole chance to win this game, unfortunately. And so, yeah, 0.8 there for me, 0.8, one of the worst of the year. And I do want to at one point total this up, but let's close. And I keep saying that, but I'll do it during this week because we're gonna have more time since we're only doing the one film during Monday, Tuesday range. So let's roll this up at this. What would be your ideal offensive line moving forward for the Giants if everyone's healthy?
Everyone's healthy. I think the tackles are easy, right? Evan Neal at
Yep.
right tackle, Andrew Thomas at left tackle. I think right now, I would prefer Josh Azudu at left guard. I think I'm done with these experiments of these other players. Look, he might make some mental mistakes every now and again, but I think I'm done with that. Center, it's Nick Gates at this point. Let him lose that job because he played so well. He played better than any of the tape that we've seen from John Feliciano, and I like John Feliciano. And the right guard position, I think, is where it gets very, very interesting. I think you go into the game with Mark Lewinsky, but I think you have John Feliciano, and if Ben Bredesen was healthy, ready to go, right? I like Ben Bredesen. I like the prospects of Ben Bredesen. And I think he's done enough to start on this offensive line, but I think I would rather go with Azudu on the left side. But on the right side, I think I'd give it to Glowinski. And then if Glowinski struggled like he did in this game, you would I'm going to go with Bredesen if he was healthy, to put Bredesen out there. But since Bredesen's not healthy, and he might be healthy eventually, but he's been out of football for a little bit, I think I'd allow John Feliciano, if he is up to speed with the guard snaps, because he's played guard throughout his entire career. I don't know how up to speed he is at this point, and that's another reason why I lean Glowinski. But yeah, Glowinski's on thin ice for me personally.
Yeah, I think we have a very similar line. For me, it comes down to center. I'm in on Gates. I'm not going to move off of that. No offense, Glowinski. No offense, Feliciano. It just is what it is. Left guard, right guard gets interesting for me because Bredesen hasn't really played right guard with the Giants, and neither has John Feliciano. So I just wonder if there will be some kind of like communication issues on this passing up these twists and stunts up front and just like ugly type of pass protection film. If not that but the problem is like, it's not like we've had good pass pro film from Glowinski at right guard. So it's not like they're losing much, right? Like Glowinski's had trouble with some twists. Glowinski's had trouble with just winning one-on-one in these pass protection reps that we saw all throughout the film. I mean, we don't do it anymore, but if we did the worst player on film, we did it last year, and because the Giants are so bad, there's like nothing else to do.
We should do it again. We should bring it back. Let's do it right now. Who's your worst player on film on offense? Worst player on film?
I was going to say it would be Glowinski by far for me.
Easily
the worst player in tape. So if you think of it from that standpoint, you can afford to take the risk of a Bredesen, not playing much lately, or Feliciano not having these reps at right guard. And so for me, the ideal line would actually be Azudu at left guard, Gates at center, and then Bredesen at right guard. Because Bredesen, to me, before the injury, was playing really well. He was actually playing better than Azudu had. And that says a lot. I still think I want Azudu at left guard, even if they're not going to move on from Glowinski at right guard. And I'd keep Bredesen on the bench then if that was the only option. If the only option the Giants' mind was Bredesen plays left guard or Bredesen plays nothing, I'd still prefer Zudu because I want him to grow and I don't think there was enough of a drop off there from what Bredesen was doing before the injury to Zudu. But ideally, I would want Bredesen at right guard.
Yeah. Bredesen's tape this season has been good, excluding the Baltimore game. The Baltimore game was very rough for Ben Bredesen. Did not perform well against his former team, but
No.
that would be my ideal line. And I'm just hoping you get Evan Neal back healthy. And look, Evan Neal struggled throughout his first couple games in the NFL, but I still think he would be a substantial upgrade over what the Giants are getting from Tyree Phillips at the moment. And I think you just need to change something up on the interior, possibly, because Glowinski is an issue. At least you entertain it. You don't have to pull the trigger right now, but he has been a pretty big liability in pass protection. And what we're getting from Nick Gates right now is not anything that I expected going into this season. So this is just a cherry on top. This is awesome. And that also gives you flexibility to use Feliciano at either of the other guard positions if you so choose to. I just like having that option because the interior part of the line, as much as it has been upgraded since last year, it's still one of the biggest and most pressing needs on this Giants team.
Yep, you nailed it, Nick. And one other thing I would say is, based on this film and just what I saw last week, if Neal is slow to come back, and I think he's going to play this week against Washington, I think he was close against Dallas and the short week hurt him. But if Neal has to miss even another game, I would honestly consider moving in Matt Parrott over Tyree Phillips based on what I've seen from the two lately. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't hate it. Parrott is going to have plays where you're going to get really pissed off at him.
Yes.
Plays where he just loses cleanly, plays where he is being spun around, plays where he looks lost, plays where his punch doesn't land. But I still think I prefer him. I think he is a better run blocker maybe than he gets credit for.
For me. Yep.
Yeah. Better run block. I feel like he's a little bit more controlled than Tyree Phillips and when he is run blocking. And it's crazy because when we drafted Matt Parrott, we were like, oh man, this guy, nimble feet, all this length, gonna be a great pass protector. I still have question marks about his pass protection. I do. But I think what he can add as a run blocker over Tyree Phillips might be just a little bit better. Not too much, but I'd be willing to entertain it.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully Neal will come back. But that's all we have for today on the offensive film breakdown. Keep it locked and loaded with Big Blue Banter. We're going to have a little bit of a mini, I guess it's like, the Giants have 10 days between their next game. We'll do the defensive film on Monday, I think, either Monday or Tuesday, but probably Monday. And then we want to kind of expand to some other things, do like a Washington preview, a long overdue mailbag. I know a lot of people are sending in mailbag questions to me DM wise. You'll have to send it again when I put the tweet out. And then maybe something else as well, but just keep it locked and loaded. Big game coming up. This is a season-defining game against Washington. I think it's very close to a must-win game.
I agree. Take care, everybody.